All right, your mics are live at 4:28.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 3rd board meeting of Everett Public Schools. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please join me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Andrews, Director Lassane,
Present.
Director Mitchell, Director Wenta.
Thank you. Our first item of business this afternoon is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business. There is a segment for board comments, one for the superintendent's report, which I promise will be short tonight, a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, one for unfinished business, one for new business, and a segment for upcoming agenda items. Following our publication to you of the agenda, several minor adjustments have been made. Item 7.6, approval of minutes of the June 28th special meeting, was updated to change the language in the call to order, clarifying the start time of the meeting. The start time was not changed, it just was a little bit more clear as a result of a director request. Item 7.18, acceptance of board member resignation. The time of the special meeting in September was changed by 1 hour to reflect the fact that it would start when two of you are already here and scheduled to be here in the building. So we made that change in the recommended action. In item 9.1, the superintendent's report, we'll be updating that during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 12.1, approval of high school enrollment growth temporary mitigation plan. The PowerPoint was updated with a couple of changes. We added a couple of slides that directors requested and then edited a little bit the language that you asked us to create to provide you an alternative approach to the motion that you discussed at your previous meeting. And in doing so, I went ahead and changed the recommendation in the agenda item so that it didn't contain a particular motion, just asked you to make a decision about the process. So that change was made. In item 14.2, which is an upcoming meeting item, it's your August 22 summer planning workshop. We updated the item with a revised draft, and when we get to that, I'll explain the changes. In all other respects, the meeting is as it was published to you. You may elect to change the agenda by a majority vote of the members. Once approved, it takes a supermajority to change an agenda. The items that I've described to you have not actually changed the agenda. They've simply provided some revisions or updates to some of the content. This is not the point in your agenda to request items be removed from the consent agenda. That comes a little bit later. Therefore, we ask your approval of the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the amended agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Now, I believe we have Director Andrews called in. Okay. Thank you. We move to section 5.0 recognition, and this afternoon, because school is out and I think a lot of people are on vacation, there are no recognitions this evening, which takes us to section 6.0, public comment. Dr. Cohn, do we have any public comments?
We do indeed.
Okay. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of our community in its meetings. School board meetings are designed to conduct district business in public. We welcome ideas and opinions presented in that same spirit. I would like to share with you how this portion of the meeting is conducted. First, the superintendent will call you to the podium in the order which you were signed up. Each speaker has 3 minutes. All comments are recorded, which will be made available for future viewing by both the board and the public. Public comment section is for the board to listen to what you have to say. It is not a time for debate or discussion. As board president, I have the responsibility to ensure the meeting and all conversations are orderly, productive, and respectful. And I appreciate your help with this responsibility. Dr. Cohn, who's our first speaker this evening?
First speaker this evening is Patrick Hall. Patrick is with the Everett Historical Commission, is a resident of the district, and wishes to speak to you about the Longfellow School mitigation. The green light will signify the start of your 3 minutes, the yellow 30-second warning, and the red will signify, the expiration of your time.
School board members and Superintendent Cohn, although all of us on the City of Everett Historical Commission are disappointed by the pending demolition of the historic Longfellow School, we appreciate the district's willingness to comply with mitigation measures outlined and the final mitigated determination of non-significance for the Longfellow site redevelopment signed on April 10th, 2017. The historic and cultural preservation mitigation steps proposed in the MDNS include documentation, including a cultural resource survey of the Longfellow property, and salvage of archaeological and/or architectural materials such as windows, doors, handrails, hardware, etc. Representatives from the Historical Commission participated in a walkthrough of the property on June 20th, 2018. We appreciate the opportunity we were given to assist in this important step. After visiting the property, we recommend a salvage assessment by a skilled professional of artifacts on site. A similar assessment was conducted prior to the demolition of the historic Collins building by the Port of Everett in 2009. The port went to great pains to carefully salvage materials such as timbers and windows from that building. The Historical Commission asked that the district consider doing such an assessment to completely identify historic materials prior to demolition. What we are suggesting is a different type of assessment than was completed for the Cultural Resources Survey and requires deeper technical expertise than our commissioners have. To conduct this kind of assessment, we recommend working with firms with experience in either historic preservation architecture or historic building deconstruction. During the walkthrough, Commissioner Jack O'Donnell identified the probable location of a time capsule placed in the ground by the school in the 1950s. It is our hope that this time capsule can be located and preserved prior to demolition. Finally, we would like the opportunity to meet with a representative from the demolition contractor prior to the beginning of work. Thank you for considering our requests.
Thank you very much for your comments.
The second speaker this evening is Tom Jen, and Tom's a resident of the district and the parent of a Mill Creek Elementary student and would like to speak with you about approval of the elementary school boundaries.
Hi, I'm a father of two children that currently go to Mill Creek Elementary that will be moving to Penny Creek at the start of the 2019 school year after the recent decision that the board made at the last meeting to redraw the elementary school boundaries. While I am disappointed that we will have to move, it's now a fact of life that my family and my neighbors will have to work through. However, as part of the transition to change, I would like to offer the school board 2 suggestions for consideration as the district looks at its future growth. The first proposal is that I would highly encourage the school district to scrutinize and audit the homeschool residency of each child. While there may be legitimate uses of school waivers that are in place, there are a few parents out there who are taking advantage of the reputation of some certain schools and using the addresses of grandparents or another relative or even a friend to take advantage of that opportunity. While they are not the sole cause of the boom in the district, I believe they are part of the problem and would like to make sure they no longer benefit while my kids are being forced out to another school. As I am already aware that there are currently at least 2 children that are in my child's class that do not belong in Mill Creek Elementary and should probably be at Silver Firs based on their home address. My second proposal for your consideration as part of your implementation plan is to look at allowing the current group of students that would be moving to stay at their current homeschool as an option, given any other considerations that might allow them to do so. This would allow the current group of kids to stay with their friends, and I believe would be a good compromise to an already stressful situation for the many affected families. And I sincerely hope that the members of the board does give these suggestions serious consideration. And I would like to thank the board for all of the hard work that's been done in the past. I know that the comments have been very emotional, but I also want to say thanks to all of my neighbors and fellow Mill Creek parents who have come out, spoken to the board, and have been active in these school discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate that.
Our third speaker this evening is Kathleen Hagemeister, and she's a resident of the district, and she would like to speak with you about the Longfellow Building.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Hagemeister, and I'm a neighbor of Longfellow School. And I just know that it is a pending thing that the school will be demolished. And I just want to express the neighborhood's sadness that we will miss the building, and feel that it was important historically. And we hate to see more just asphalt put down and used for parking. And then our other hope, since there's nothing that we can do about it, is that there'll be some kind of nice parkway where, I don't know, trees or shrubbery or something to make it look like still like part of a neighborhood. And but we want it to be known that we care about that building and the history of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The fourth request this evening is Claire Griffith. Claire is a resident of the district, and she'd like to talk with you about the Longfellow Building.
My neighbors and I are very sorry about losing this historical building. And I know there's nothing we can do about it, but I do want you to know how badly we feel about it.
Thank you.
And the fifth speaker this evening is Sarah Sarah is I believe a resident of the district and a parent of a student, at least one student in the district, and she would like to talk with you about moving Area 4, North Point, to Penny Creek Elementary.
Hi. I wasn't actually planning on coming up here and speaking again today, but I just wanted to say at the May 22nd school board meeting, I know I spoke in front of the board then as well, and I had asked Dr. Cohn and the board to please walk the route that North Point kids take to get from our neighborhood to Penny Creek Elementary, and then to see what that looks like in comparison to the current route to Mill Creek Elementary. I know that it's a done deal, that the board has voted and that our children in our neighborhood are moving to Penny Creek Elementary, but I, out of curiosity, would like to know if that actually happened, if anyone at the board, on the board, was able to actually walk that route. I'm curious just because I know that Mr. Gunn, I believe, right, had said that there were, I believe, 72 out of 75, I'm probably fudging on the numbers there, of the children in our neighborhood that was signed up to take the bus. I don't know if my son is signed up to take the bus. If he is, I would be surprised to find, I would love to know how he got signed up, actually, because he's never taken the bus. He's always been either driven to school or picked up, or I have taken my younger two to, walk that route to Mill Creek Elementary to drop him off and pick him up from school. There's 3 crosswalks that we take, and they're all marked, and to go in the other direction to Penny Creek Elementary, every street that they would cross is not marked, including the shopping plaza of Thomas Lake and Buffalo Creek or Buffalo Park. The only crosswalks that are marked is State Route 9, which is that busy street of 132nd and 35th Avenue. And I'm really concerned that if my child and other children in the North Point neighborhood are participating in those after-school enrichment programs, and there's a lot that's offered. I know there's so many that are offered, and my son has participated in many of those. They're immediately after school, usually for about an hour, and there's no bus system for these kids to take to get back home. And so, that's a huge takeaway for us. And I know that, Director Mitchell, you had mentioned at the last board meeting that perhaps it could be something that's looked into, that there's going to be, busing provided for these kids from our neighborhood to, come back home after these after-school enrichment programs at Penny Creek Elementary. And I just would really like the board to look into, the possibility of providing that for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you for your ideas and suggestions.
That concludes the requests this evening.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to section 7.0, which is the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please introduce tonight's consent agenda?
Yes, the board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes and personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda items that occur less frequently, I should say will include items that occur less frequently, but they are of a routine business nature. These less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of the items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business and the remaining items are automatically renumbered by our board doc system. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received several inquiries. One is regarding a resignation in the personnel report, and that response, or that inquiry was responded to with the facts around the resignation. One was regarding the Longfellow building, and we provided a significant response, and it, in this case, was in writing, and we copied the other directors. And then one was regarding before and after school care, the RFP bid award, and in that case, we also did some additional research for you and then sent out the information to all of the directors. In no cases did we change items in the consent agenda, and therefore we present the consent agenda for your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda?
I would actually like to propose that we move the Longfellow to the regular standing agenda because I do have some further questions I'd like to discuss.
Okay, so that's 7.14.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right. I would like to provide, request that we move the item 7.13 and allow for additional questions to be presented and clarifying answers to be placed in record.
And that's the authorization of bid for
Before and after school care.
after school care. Any others? Okay. Hearing none, we will move to.
It takes 2. You concur with both of those requests?
I do.
Okay. Give us a moment,
Sorry.
please. And then please refresh your displays. You should see 22 items numbered in the consent agenda list.
Yeah, I was asking, I can't hear anything, it's terribly cutting in now. So I was asking Debbie to call in on the regular phone. Email.
Okay, I can try that other number.
Off of speaker and get it from her.
Okay.
Yes.
I have 22 items. Okay, we will now move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries.
So we will record Carol as what? Is she off the line?
She is gone for the moment.
Okay, so we'll need to record her as an abstention until you can get her, well, hopefully she'll come back soon.
Okay. So that takes us to section 8.0, board comments. This is a time where directors have an opportunity to share information or comments as they relate to district business. Director Mitchell, why don't I start
Okay.
us off tonight?
Yes, thank you. I do have a list that I've written down. I'm going to be honest to you, Mrs. Unn, I have not walked that route. I drive it all the time because I do live down there. And one question I do have for Mr. Moore that does not need to be answered now. With the closure of 35th and busing implications, since 35th is closed from now until January, how that will impact busing from North Point and the northern neighborhoods with regards to any buses, how they're going to get to, even if they could get to Mill Creek, how they're going to get to Heatherwood or Jackson. So not answered now, just a question because of that closure that is severely impacting Saddle Hill Road. So then my second thing that I would like to say is in the salary schedule, in the consent agenda, I did not feel it was needed to be pulled, but with our I noticed that the substitution pay in several of the areas is much lower than standard pay. And where I've worked in the past, when I have helped with those salary schedules, we always sort of had it a little bit closer to be more competitive. So again, it's just a question I would like to see, especially if we're having problems with substitutes, that having a standard pay of $22 and a substitute pay of $14, which is just above minimum wage, how do we get qualified candidates? So it's just a question. Then I am very thankful for Mr. Moore moving forward, Mr. Gunn moving forward with the remodeling of Penny Creek and Cedarwood and Mill Creek. I have driven past them. I have seen them. Thank you for that. I'm glad we were able to get that working this summer. Then my next thing is that I am very thankful for, even though our meeting a couple weeks ago was really tough, because that elementary school boundary changes was, I think, the hardest thing that I have done sitting on the school board. That I think our news media gets some not good press on their own, but I'm very thankful to the Herald because I felt that their article about our decision was very fair and unbiased. And then lastly, I would just like to end that in honor of the 4th of July and our country's independence, I found out recently that my grandmother is a daughter of the American Revolution. And I think that the story that was told in Hamilton really does show that our country was founded by immigrants. And I am thankful for every person who chooses to live in our district. We have a fabulous district to raise your children and have them be educated, all the staff that serve here. And I just hope everyone has a very happy and safe 4th of July tomorrow. And if they're going away for the weekend, their travels are safe. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Lesane?
Yes, I'm so glad that the 4th is coming around because, one, it will show that we've concluded with our graduations, so far. We still have one major graduation coming up in August, and I'm looking very much forward to that and hopefully see the numbers increase really high so we can say we had several kids that were challenged overcome that challenge. And so I'm looking forward to that. But what I am very happy to say is on the 27th of June, which was just last Thursday, I happened to have the opportunity to attend a youth apprenticeship signing day down at the Museum of Flight. And these youths are from all over the Snohomish County and King County, and even Spokane. There were some kids from Spokane. They are signing to go into an apprenticeship program with aerospace manufacturers, not just the Boeing company, but Boeing's pipeline as well as other aerospace. And we happened to have 10 students from Everett and Snohomish that were signing that day. So, woo, let's just increase that number next year, because in the program was the governor as well as the executive of King County, Dow Constantine. And so it was great to hear from them saying that we need to increase the number of apprenticeships in our Snohomish and King County area, because jobs are just going to continue to rise in those areas. And one of the things that is so grateful to be on the board here at Everett is that not only do we concentrate on kids going to college as a follow-on to high school, but there are a lot of kids that are going right into a career. And so our effort to ensure that they are prepared is very important and very vital to their success. So I'm very happy to say that I was there in attendance to see 10 of our students say that they wanted to go into an apprenticeship program with aerospace manufacturers. So this is a good thing. So, this going. And I do know that we had people from the STEM and Career Connected Learning team down there. So that's a wonderful thing. So just keep that going.
Thank you. I don't have comments tonight other than to say I know that's the time of year when all of us get to take a break from the hard work that we've done. There's been a lot of hard work once again this year. I know the folks sitting in the front row put in a tremendous amount of energy and effort all year long. So I hope each of you has an opportunity to take that break. That's so deserved and much needed. And I'm on a plane tomorrow, so that's where my mind is after the meeting. Okay. Carol?
Carol, do you have any comments?
We're going to take that as a no. Okay. We're going to move to section 9.0, the superintendent's report. Dr. Cohn, please share the news and celebrations.
All right. Well, I think the cover slide on tonight's set of images is of those students from Everett Public Schools at the Advanced Manufacturing Apprentice Signing Day. And I think this is an event that Director Lassane rightly noted is something we're very, very proud of. About 60 state apprentices were present to sign contracts. Once students complete an apprentice program, they will have earned a journeyman license, a high school diploma, a college credit, over $20,000, and zero debt, according to the information that we have here. So we want to recognize our students and note how very proud we are of their accomplishment. While school is out, we've got a lot of students who are still involved in school clubs. Evergreen Middle School's Technology Student Association, or TSA, team attended the National TSA Conference in Atlanta last week. This was Evergreen's first time to attend this national conference. Several students were recognized during the award ceremony, and we wanted to make sure that you had a quick picture of them. We had students who were recognized in electrical applications and were finalists in STEM animation, and we want to just make sure we take a moment and congratulate them on their accomplishments. We have a very robust summer school again this year. At the elementary level, 1,163 elementary students are enrolled so far. We have 70 on the waiting list. Middle school students enrolled about 204, and that's at the math middle program, and then about 117 for the English learner program at middle school. For high school, 668 students are taking 1,105 courses at Cascade High School. Plus, there are an additional 81 students involved in WANIC courses at the Cascade campuses. WANIC stands for the Washington Network for Innovative Careers. That's the skill center we belong to that involves a lot of districts along the east side. That skill center has been particularly supportive of our summer program expansion and enrolling students in technical programs. So we wanted you to know that summer school is again, very robust this summer. We also have a very robust staff development or professional development program this year. In June, there were 47 activities and 1,192 attendees completed coursework. In July, we have 45 activities and 181 staff are involved. In August, we have 148 options for folks. 551 are enrolled, and staff are still enrolling in these daily. Jackson Elementary School and Eisenhower Middle School were the recipients of gifts from their PTAs. At Jackson, the PTA donated $9,907 and change to help purchase new playground equipment. You may recall that once that's done, that equipment becomes the responsibility of the school district. Eisenhower Middle School received funds from their PTSA to purchase spin bikes and replacement equipment and technology for their very, very involved physical education program. Construction updates, I'm not going to actually spend time to go through all of the 24 or so projects, just a couple of quick items. And yes, we do have a video of the groundbreaking Elementary 18, but we're not playing that here for you this evening. It's on the website, and you can watch it if you haven't already. Also available on social media. Great, thank you. The contractors continuing to pour, strip and backfill the building foundations. I want to thank the county. We ran into a potential snag with the building permit. We made a call to the county, and they responded within hours to get that permit in our hands so our construction could go forward unimpeded. We're very grateful for the building department, the county council, the county executive's office, and all the folks who are supporting our response to the tremendous growth of population within our county, within our school district. Safety and security upgrades, selective demolition work is underway for the new office and entry at Mill Creek and Cedarwood Elementaries. It's also nearing completion at Penny Creek and Silver Firs. This picture shows you how significant that work is and how fast those contractors can clear out space in order to replace them with the more secure entryways in those schools. Work to install a new access control and video intercom systems is underway at Whittier, Evergreen, and Jackson. This is a quick list of school visits for me during the previous month. Remember, we kind of save them up for you and give them to you for the previous month, and a lot of this involved club meetings GSA club meetings at high schools and middle schools, and high school commencement ceremonies, the first team sponsorship dinner, and I was able to, at the invitation of the ASB officers, attend a portion of the academic assembly at Cascade High School, and I have to tell you, it is so much fun if you ever have a chance to do that. I certainly recommend it. It's part of students' experience in our high schools, and it's certainly worth the investment of time. That's my report for this evening. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
At this time, we are going to invite Mr. Beckley and his team up for section 10.0, our strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we get an update on our integrated technology plan.
Yes. Good evening. Good afternoon.
I never know which one to say. And then I flip back and forth.
Yes.
Is it night? Is it afternoon?
Well, good afternoon. and evening to everyone.
Sorry.
We are here today. I'm joined by Joanne and Scott. Ken's not able to join us. Ken Twain's not able to be here to share our year-end summary, also a look ahead for our integrated technology plan. And we've got a lot of information packed into this presentation, so we'll also have time for questions at the end. But really exciting work that's taken place this year, and excitement to move ahead as well. So our plan is to kind of talk about the year in review, but embed into that sort of a look ahead in each of the goal areas. That is how we will also share the highlight of the next steps in the integrated tech plan. Our strategic plan crosses many areas, as we've shared with you before, and we'll organize the presentation as we've done in the past with sort of highlights and geared around each of the goal areas is the plan. And so we're going to start with Scott talking about infrastructure.
You've heard us throughout the past year come up several times and talk about the one-to-one project. So, that was a big, large-scale part of our infrastructure. But several other things happened, too, along with that. One-to-one, one of them was nearly 5,000 Chromebooks going out as part of a refresh life cycle management for the Smarter Balance testing. So that was another huge undertaking as well. And one of the things we talk about infrastructure, we think of things, but we also added 2 of our field technicians to be at the one-to-one sites as well. So those resources were really critical as well. So that added together, those are a large part of a lot of things that were happening this past year. In the next few slides, we kind of give you an overview of what's going on in each of the schools. And that's kind of for your perusal, but you can see even throughout these next few slides, there's things going on at each school. And so we started with this slide because these are the elementary schools that haven't yet are not part of the one-to-one rollout yet. So all of the elementaries, no matter if they're part of it yet, things are happening at the sites, whether their printers being upgraded, whether there's certificated labs, whether they're Chromebooks being upgraded. So there's something happening at each site. And we wanted to have you guys be able to take a look at this in the section like this so you could see that throughout this year, every school, every student literally has been impacted by the upgrades along this process. So we feel really good about what we've been able to accomplish and give the students throughout this past year. Middle school, same too. This next year, the middle schools will be starting their part of their getting ready for their one-to-one integration by doing their professional development. So they're also getting ready for their one-to-one rollouts. And the high schools, we just finished with very successfully, I think, with Everett High and Sequoia. And we will be putting into practice what we learned this year when we go forth with Jackson and Cascade. And one of those little things that we learned, and maybe is we were really concerned about the students being able to put the sleeves we got for the laptops in their backpacks. So we were going for thin. And then we didn't realize, even though we should have, my son still does it, boys throw their backpacks around and they sit on them and step on them. And so we thought that's not really good. So one of the learnings this year was the new back sleeves have a thicker lining that will be an insulation against being able to take some of the pounding that the boys get for the backpacks. So that's kind of one of the things we're putting into place of our learnings this past year as we get ready for Jackson and Cascade. This is giving you kind of a little sample of what the use of the students, the devices, how they begin being used in the schools at both Sequoia and at Everett, and then how throughout the year they began to be used more. So you can see that in August, September, October, November, there was that initial use. December, you expect it to go down because it's holidays. But by March and April and May, things were really into swing. The teachers had really got under their belts how to use them effectively. The students were using them more and more. So we just look at this as, you can see this, the trend all year long was going up. So what we're going to be interested in seeing next year is if they can start where they left off and even go up further than that. And looking forward for next year, again, will be the Lenovo tablets going out to Cascade at Jackson High School. Will be some more four more elementary schools will be doing the one-to-one for the Chromebooks. But there's also 2 or 3 major programs as well. The telephone system is going to be upgraded throughout the district, and that touches, again, everybody. Copy machines, the lease agreements up, and those in printer life cycles will be part of the upgrade again this next year, and that touches again every building and every staff member. And we've implementing a new much more versatile asset management system with so many devices out there moving around. We want a quick way to determine where things are and move them around and being able to track them.
So as we move on to talk about our teaching goal, we've been really excited this year. We launched our Office 365 with all of our students. We are over 1/3 of our teachers being trained in our Eduro learning, moving down that road. And we have celebrate our 2 integrating technology facilitators. That just in time in the room type of job embedded professional development was a real success. And then we've launched Canvas, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, but just early adopters with no real launch or training. We already had 761 teachers utilizing that course management system, and 2,098 students already experiencing life in a digital world with their course management. And then we're seeing further integration of technology into our maps. We look at our continued growth over time and maintenance of using our Office 365 environment. Again, we launched just about September, and we're seeing just the dip in the holidays is really where we're seeing those changes happen. When we look at Google, we've had high use in Google for a long time, but looking at Google Classroom, we have a lot of teachers looking to manage in a digital platform. And right now, right in front of them is Google Classroom. And so again, you see the dips in the vacation areas, but they're leveraging managing digital content with their students. But as we grow more sophisticated in need, Google has a very simple platform. And so we look at Canvas, which is our course management system, or what they call a learning management system, because it does more than just exchange files back and forth. It becomes a place, a repository for our content, our curriculum. It links to our other digital tools. You can bring in connections to our Office 365 and our Google Drive environment. So it really becomes a hub for all these various digital extras. And one of the things that we're focused on is transitioning and then growing in the Canvas environment. So we initially are starting, we're going to ask you to look at the screen because it does have a video. You're seeing a flat picture on the PDF, but I just want to show you kind of how it looks. We have a curriculum portal in which we're putting all of our teacher-facing materials. We can subdivide it by content or by grade level. A teacher would, and then we also have our career pathways to understand the courses. A teacher would go and select their content area like social studies, and they would arrive in a portal totally dedicated to social studies. As they move through that space, that social studies space, they would then be able to go find their particular courses beyond the general material. And we're able then to deliver their content. We can put video content in here. We can do training for their digital platforms in here. And they can go all the way into their unit documents. So documents can be downloaded from here, viewed from here, and utilized. And so all of our staff would start the year with this materials at their, accessible to them and easy for them to utilize in their own environment in Canvas. We started this year with one of our courses transitioning. So one of the things Canvas offers us is a blueprint. So we can make a master course with all the shared developed content and deliver it to every section and every student and every teacher. And then they use it, publish it as they're ready to utilize it. So it's pretty much at their doorstep. They can add to it, they can reorganize it. But in the beginning of the year, anything we have shared development can be delivered here. So our college and career readiness class started this second semester. And so teachers and students would come into this environment. The modules is like a unit. It's a way to organize content, and all of the content shared among all the teachers in the district is present here. And so they have these materials. Again, they can add to it, they can alter it, they can modify, but they control also when students see it, so we deliver it to the teachers and they move from there. I'm really excited. Even today, I received a text getting ready for tonight. And the teacher said, I'm playing with Canvas, getting all my activities, lessons in the sandbox. For now, I'm just putting in assignments just to get in there, but this is going to be awesome. I love the videos and the web links go right into the platform. We've trained about 40 people just in the last week, and it's some of the highest evaluations we've had yet. They're very excited to embrace this platform. So as we move forward, we're leveraging that authentic learning experiences, housing it in a course management system. And so you're starting to see the PD support that we're offering. So we have our one-to-one integrating technology facilitators. Our LMS director teams are supporting the schools as they move on, the elementaries. And then we continue with our authentic learning PD, professional development, where the teachers come together and learn throughout the year. So it's really leveraging outward quite nicely. As we look forward to adding a new integrating technology facilitator. The state has just adopted the ISTE standards for the ed tech standards, and they blend beautifully with our 21st century skills. And we're doing some of that crosswalk work to introduce to our staffs. It was just adopted in April, so we're moving forward with that. And then we're finding some of our digital adoptions plug right into Canvas as a delivery tool. So that course content is also coming from our vendors through this venue. In addition, we're looking at assessment. We had a very successful year with our elementary gradebook. We produced, everyone's in the same gradebook now, and now we've produced the progress report. We're growing the tracking of standards over time. Eventually, that will be open to our families as well to be able to follow with another year with the teachers understanding the collection of data in the gradebook. So we're excited about that as we look for our digital benchmark assessments, our language live interventions, some of our social emotional learning assessments in the Panorama Ed. And then the classroom management, just wanted to highlight one of the things Canvas offers us is some of the SBA-like items. And so part of their tools and quizzes next is you actually can have visuals and they're tagging in the visual. It's called a hotspot item. They have scenarios where the text and the prompts are here. It can even be video, and the questions can be aligned on the same screen. So we're able to start emulating some of those items within our content area as well, using those tools. And then I'm going to hand off to Brian.
So you'll see several things listed here under outreach that we have continued from previous years with our Technology Advisory Council. We had spoken in the fall about the data dashboard. We continue to keep that updated. A couple of things that I'd like to just call out that are different is our connection with beginning to be involved in our community conversations. We had one example with our Hispanic community where our families from Everett High School met with our families from Jackson and Cascade High School about the coming one-to-one initiative and what that would look like and how that would impact them. And they got to talk to each other. And it was a really powerful experience that we hope to expand as we move forward. Also, our virtual parent engagement, working with Catherine Matthews in her office. She hosted some Zoom conferencing with the Washington Comprehensive Science Assessment. We kind of learned as we went along about the best way to deliver that. But the feedback we got from the parents that participated, it was sort of met them where they could do it from their home and get some great information. And so we were able to connect, want to expand the use of that sort of at-home virtual parent engagement moving forward. And also calling out the Sprint, we've talked to you about the Sprint hotspot outreach, and so now we've got some data to share with you. Sprint offered this up through February at this point. We'll have more to share with you next year, but their feedback to us was comparison across the nation, Everett's utilization of the hotspot was far greater than most other districts across the nation. About 90% utilization for the hotspot usage of our students. They're very exciting, over 9,000 days of access that wouldn't have happened had not we had this connection. So it's a very exciting feedback, and we will expand that next year at Cascade and Jackson. So looking forward, just the piece about outreach, our Technology Advisory Council really talked about the excitement of the second year of the Integrated Tech Plan and really getting out and sharing the different data points and the different metrics that we share with the board, and you get see information, but getting that out to the public as well in different venues. And so we, along with looking for a middle school at-home internet access and hosting family online digital safety courses, will all be in our outlook for moving forward in outreach to families. Under leadership, we continue to want to leverage our leadership team. You see some The upgrade to Frontline is a highlight for efficiency and effectiveness for employment and professional development. Continue to work on integrating our tech plan into our annual operating plan and school improvement plans, and leverage with our leadership team about the integrated tech plan and its copy machine and printer cost savings. We're already beginning to see that at Everett High School in Sequoia, as for example. Joanne and her team, with the board policy you adopted 21-24 on digital citizenship and media literacy, have developed units working with our leadership team and their librarians to bring these lessons. They have them set up by quarter and by grade level to bring these lessons and modules to the students to train them on digital citizenship. So we'll begin to see more of that now that the policy has been adopted. The materials are already there. And so expanding and the use of the digital citizenship in media is going to be a focus for us, along with the sustainability of the integrated technology plan and those funding streams, which I know we'll be talking with the board about moving forward. Go ahead.
Most important in all, and we've put it towards the end, is learning, but we want you to hear from the voices in the field.
Real innovation in the classrooms, from the PE classroom that's using it to have students film themselves and one another in terms of their positions in yoga class, to kids constructing elaborate projects in the hallways, filming one another, editing one another's work, collaborating, to new kinds of assignments that teachers are creating and asking students to use to demonstrate their skill sets, whether it's the 21st century skills that they're working on or whether it's something content specific related to social studies or English, and the ability for kids to reach outside of our classroom walls, whether that's virtual field trips, whether that's the kind of access to people and information that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. There's so many ways in which one-to-one is touching our learning environment and really transforming it.
What I'm looking forward to is really moving within the SAMR model from kind of substitution and augmentation to really getting at modification and redefinition. I think staff have really leaned in, kids have leaned in, and now we're at the point that we can take it to that next level. And Canvas will be part of that solution, because now we'll be able to do flipped classrooms as we can push out videos, more learning at home.
We want students to learn to utilize technology not just for consumption and watching videos, playing games, that sort of thing, social media, but we also want them to know that all those tools can be used for learning. And so we have teachers that are having their students create using their devices. And I think that's been one of the most transformative.
It has been life-changing in special ed. I've heard from our special ed teachers before about how this is the most feedback they've ever received from their students in their entire career, because the paper pencil model, that didn't always meet the needs of all those students, and all the tools that are a part of the technology and the student devices have allowed them, the students, to give more information to the teachers and communicate with their parents, communicate with the students. It's been pretty amazing for special ed.
Another thing that I have thought was really important to the success of the one-to-one implementation is how much the district has supported this. They're providing the support for students and staff. So students need to have access. So if they're having troubles at home with their Wi-Fi and it not connecting, we have IT people that are troubleshooting that. We have IT people on site. So if something's not working, in fact, this morning, a student had a device and he was like, something's not working, let's call Brian. And Brian's the IT person here at Sequoia. And so, having those resources are really important, and the students know that this is valuable to the district. They feel valued. And the staff as well, they have said, we thought we were just gonna get the training in the first year before devices, and it continued this year. And then also their principal, like Kelly, has also provided some PD after school that's just school focused, and having LMS come in with myself as the facilitator. And that's important that staff know that there's always people that they can turn to ask for help or resources. And I think the district has done an amazing job of providing that. And the students, when they got the devices, you could tell, and they've made comments about, wow, you're giving me something that is of this much value. and you're trusting me to take care of this, and how much you could tell that they felt valued as a person, and that, that we were entrusting them to take care of it. So pretty amazing things have happened.
I've been in lots of classrooms where stuff isn't going right, and they're like, everybody's problem solving together, which is like building this great environment here of if somebody can't figure it out, they either go to a peer, they're going to another teacher, but everybody's helping each other, everybody's willing to take risks, and it hasn't been stressful, like, at all. It's been actually really seamless and pretty smooth, the whole process.
The first one I look at is that our success rate and passing rate in classes is up between 10 and 15% each of our academic terms, which translates to hundreds of credits over the course of the year. Our graduation rate is trending significantly up, and then our dropout rate is trending significantly down. And I believe that technology is part of that. As students, we have a way to get a hold of students when they're not coming because they have emails and technology devices. We're able to communicate, send work home to them. They're able to stay connected. And as far as our dropout rate, every student has to bring a computer back when they drop out, which means they're walking in the school and we greet them, talk about their device, and then talk about what future program we're going to have. So I think that's been an important piece of that.
What one-to-one brings is that students, no one is excluded from a robust learning experience because they have limitations when it comes to technology and access to technology. And so that in and of itself is a form of equity, but I also think that normalizing it as a part of their lives, they're going to be using technology in whatever careers they end up in. And so by normalizing technology into their experience when it comes to learning, we're preparing all students for that next step, whether it's college or career or college and career.
So we think that they say it very well and better than we could. We did do some literacy. We went back to our 8th graders again to continue the 8th grade literacy survey. So this is our middle schools. We still continue there to see a growth. You see Tier 1 is dramatically being reduced as Tier 2 and Tier 3 are growing. We did survey our 9th grade at Everett High, and our Sequoia did a school-wide sample. What we found is we're going to look for a new survey tool. The state tool kind of is sort of, if you casually get to computers, it doesn't have enough questions about deep use and giving us enough information. So what we did is we did ask this year 4 questions, and Kelly Shepard mentioned the impact in her school of using technology, and these are the students' responses to our additional 4 questions. At Everett High, we're seeing the 9th grade sample. We're seeing where our growth areas are as far as we saw increase of use over time in the school with the devices. And so we see the use in the classes starting to grow, that they're starting to use it at home. And then the deepening and the effectiveness is where our growth areas are. And it's a larger school and work there, but we're in the game and we're seeing that growth. Both principals spoke to we saw substitution and augmentation this year. Our goals are modification. Now that they're comfortable, redefinition and modification is really where we're heading. So they see that as their next goals in their work. And so as we look forward, the development of our student technology leaders, Jackson High School and Cascade are underway, expanding our digital citizen. And we really think Canvas will be a game changer as a way for them to organize, coordinate, and then students have all those resources at home as well.
So just to wrap things up, we come back to Project Red, which was our founding document years ago as we started this foundation with our integrated technology plan and best practices of a properly implemented plan and what that looks like and the attributes of that. And we just highlighted here some examples of our integrated tech plan to date that are reflected for those key implementation factors of Project Red. We keep that document in front of us as we move forward to sort of guide our work and to sort of monitor how we're doing. So we spent some time reviewing our progress and looking ahead to year 3 in each of our goal areas, highlighting next steps, and we would love to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much for a very thorough presentation, and to the 3 of you and Ken for rolling this out this year. It's been a big deal, and you guys have done an exceptional job. We are very appreciative of the work you've done and put into this. So it's exciting to move on to the next year and see how it grows and where we go from here. Mm-hmm. With that said, directors, do you have questions for any of the team?
Yes, congratulations, good work, and good. We're really moving on, and I really like that. That's very impressive. My questions are, you have shown that in 2018, 2019, we're going to do a lot of enhancing Wi-Fi at some elementary schools. About when will we have completed that enhancement at all of our elementary schools? And does that also mean that middle school and high schools are getting or have gotten that enhancement?
So to answer the second question first, that is happening as we speak. Okay. The enhancements are for sure at Cascade and Jackson, and we were able to build into the plan the enhancements at the middle school level in preparation for, even though it's a year away before they get their one-to-one at the middle school level. Sort of the next phase would be the elementary, and we're hoping to, it all depends on the time. Certainly before the year that they receive their devices, they would make sure that they have the enhancements necessary in their schools.
We're pushing, once we give the high schools their devices, we're pushing those Chromebooks down to the middle schools.
Right. And
at the same time, are we not improving the Wi-Fi capability at those elementary schools?
If we need to, yes.
Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And you mentioned two facilitators in the rooms now at the schools, Sequoia and Everett. Will they stay there, and will we get, you said one more facilitator coming in this new year when Cascade and Jackson are implementing? Will that be sufficient to handle all of the questions and work that we've seen we needed there at Sequoia and Everett in this new coming year?
And so on-site Cascade, so the large comprehensive high schools will each have one full-time instructional facilitator, and Joanne and her team are going to augment at the elementary and at Sequoia the support. They've sort of divided their LMS team up to provide that support, and so we're gonna try that model as a way of making sure that they are supported, and we can continue to update you. That's the plan.
That's the plan. That's good. I have just two more questions, but I'll make it one.
Before you do, can I just double check? I thought I heard the question that you asked. We're moving we're moving Chromebooks to the middle schools, and I thought you answered yes.
Well, for example, this year at Cascade and Jackson, those Chromebooks are some of them will be at use at middle school because they're still using Chromebooks. Some will go to elementary. We want to increase usage at the middle school level while we're making sure that there's one-to-one at the elementary level.
But that's not the final resting place for those Chromebooks, right?
Right. So part of the work ahead.
Well, unless they, expire.
Yeah. Well, that could be the final resting place. That is true, literally. But in terms of the device selection for middle school, that will be part of our plan coming forward. And just like we've done in the past with high school, we'll engage the board in what that process looks like. And so, right, the Chromebooks that are making their way to middle school, we're going to use them as long as we can at whatever level we can. But in terms of that being the device at middle school, that has not been the final decision.
Now, Canvas LMS system, do we have any security concerns in the implementation and the amount of information we're placing on that portal? Do we have any security concerns as far as privacy or?
So we have a contract with Canvas and traditional of all of our digital tools. We have secure access. It's password protected. When they're in the district, logging onto the computer automates them in, but it's all done with authentication. And so the other tools are also part of that authentication piece. So it's all password protected and data security agreements and privacy pieces. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are aware.
And we own all the content in Canvas.
Okay.
We are the owners of anything that's in there. Everything's archived. Everything is exportable. So nothing we put in, we can't get out.
Okay, and it's not shared information with the organization that
Well, Canvas is a vendor, and we have a data sharing agreement because they import our student information like all our vendors do for use only, limited to the IDs and that are needed to get in. But we use our Active Directory as well. So they don't store passwords or any of those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. And Sprint hotspots. As we continue to move forward with looking at the data and the usage in Jackson and Cascade, it might be skewed just because of the nature of the beast of, who's using what and where compared to other schools, Sequoia, and Everett High School. The concern I have is that we're not going to plan to turn off the agreement of partnership with Sprint just because the data usage might seem lower.
That is not the plan. No, in fact, it's the opposite. We would love to expand the program. That there's limitations that they've placed as to how much they will provide. We are interested in purchasing, because as many hotspots as we can have, they will provide access with the Sprint program. And so we are excited by continuing that partnership. There's an agreement for several years with Sprint, and we're gonna hold to that year to year. It's only a high school. That's one thing I mentioned. We need to find a solution for middle school because it is only a high school program. So that'll be part of our work this year.
Oh, that is very true.
Yeah, but we have some ideas. We'll bring
very
those.
good. Keep those ideas going. Yeah. Thank you.
Director Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. I should be quick. Joanne, I have a second question about Canvas. Sure. I believe that the leadership, teaching and learning have been working on sort of shared curriculum, shared assessments. Is Canvas now where those will all be housed, and all the rubrics and everything that everybody's been developing through all these years now has a home?
Yeah, it's had a home in our DocuShare and our website, but this has a little more dynamic to it. Videos are live instead of just links to a third platform. Yeah, and that's the work we're doing now, is what exists transitioning over this year, and then next year expanding and developing that.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's also connecting in early learning and the pathways, places, cross-referencing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarity. And Brian and your team, I just want to recognize, many of you might not have been at the Sequoia graduation, but the young man that gave his speech did speak to the fact that he received one-on-one technology and how he was so impressed, as were the other students at Sequoia, that they were chosen as one of the first schools. So I think that is a real reflection on what you did and what we do for each student in the district. So thank you. And then also, Joanne, sorry, this is just a comment, you don't have to respond, but I was really impressed with the deepening learning at Sequoia, and then also Kelly's comments about how it is engaging her students, how it is maybe bringing back some dropouts. I think that's a real unintended benefit. Potentially is awesome. And then my last thing, I presume that the video is of our classrooms of the little kids with their laptops down, where there still is a rule of eyes on me.
Right.
And I really appreciate the fact that the kids could do this. Teacher still has command of her classroom, his classroom. And that was kind of nice to see. So thank you.
I have a couple, I think, quick questions. What is the life cycle of a Chromebook, typically?
Well, man, Chromebooks can last a long time. We have Chromebooks that have exceeded their warranty and are still usable, and we keep using them. We have a built-in warranty, and then we buy the extended warranty for 4 years. It's 4 years, right, Scott? 4 years. But we have some in use that are beyond that, and so we just use them till they stop working. And if they're out of warranty,
so average is 4 years, maybe?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Checkos.
Scott, you want to add anything?
So it is 4 year, but we plan on using them a 5th year as kind of a fade in, fade out year. So,
as available and as usable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's still,
Yeah, okay.
Till the keys.
And do any of our elementary schools have computer labs left, or are they all gone?
They are all gone.
As of this year or last year?
As of this year. That's part of the summer work. Yeah.
And I want to say I appreciate slide 7 and 8, where you really detailed it by school and what's going on. That was very helpful, because it's a lot of information with all the different schools.
Instead of a list, we thought at a glance for you would be helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. What a great way to end the year. Very happy note.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to section 11.0, our information and discussion section, and we have Ruth Floyd with us to take us through the third quarter financial update.
I'll get it ready for you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Third quarter financial update is very similar to the second quarter. You won't find many differences at all, so I will be going fairly quickly. It's as usual, there's 5 funds that I'll highlight, general fund in a little bit more detail, and then the others. Our revenues are driven by student enrollment, and we have revised the annual average expected enrollment for the year. Because the end of the year is drawing closer, we're getting more keyed in on exactly what that annual average FTE will be, and it looks like it'll be about 170 FTE below our projections in the 2017-18 budget. Projected revenues and transfers are expected to be about $272.3 million. That's within a couple $100,000 of where we thought it would be in the second quarter. Update to you. It does reflect our levy revenue. I believe that we had been projecting that at $52 million. We expect it to be more like 51.6. Our projected expenditures, $273.7 million, well within the board authorized appropriations. Our third quarter expenditures have been fairly consistent each month, but we do expect them to increase toward the end of the year. Ending fund balance, $23.6 million estimated, and then that's about 8.6% of total expenditures. Our capital projects fund revenues are as expected. They're following a trend like prior years. October and April do have those spikes due to levy proceeds, and that's the 2016 capital levy. Our board authorized appropriations are $72 million, and we'll be well within that dollar amount. The appropriations do fluctuate, as you know, based on project plans. And again, you will see an increase in the fourth quarter on expenditures, just because we're accelerating in our projects, as well as we have a lot of summer work, and that gets accrued back to August. Our ending fund balance for capital projects for May was $61.7 million. And then for debt service fund, our May ending fund balance was $23.4 million, and it is in a trend that looks normal for the prior years. And we do make interest and principal payments for bond payments on June 1st, and there is plenty of money there for the $3.6 million. ASB fund, May ending fund balance was $1.6 million, and we, like prior years, we expect the fund balance to continue to go down, as is normal for the cycle of when they bring in their revenues. Those come in the beginning of the year for the most part, and then taper off, and expenditures continue throughout the year. And our multi-year fund balance comparison, this is for the third quarter, comparing May 31 of this year to May 31 of last fiscal year, ending May 31, and that's ending fund balance. And as you can see, it has decreased this year. It did all year. They've been doing a good job of spending their money, and you can see those negative numbers there. It just means that the current May 31 balance is less than last May 31. And then transportation vehicle fund, we had about $145,000 in May, and we have 2 buses on order, so that dollar amount will go down at the end of August, but at the same time we're receiving our depreciation payment, so the end of the year will be around $120,000 or somewhere in there. for ending fund balance. And that's all I have unless you have any questions. Pretty quick.
Thank you. Directors, do you have questions regarding the third quarter financial update?
I don't have a question. I just really want to reiterate our desire that the ASB does spend down their money. And I appreciate all the work you do to counsel them and guide them and hold their hands. So thank you for that and a very clear report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're finished.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to take a 13-minute break, and can we do that? Yes. And reconvene at 6 p.m.
That works.
Mention. Oh. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Reconvene here. We are on section 12.0, unfinished business, and tonight we have the approval of high school enrollment growth temporary mitigation plan to discuss. Mr. Gunn's going to walk us through a brief presentation, I believe, and then we're going to have an opportunity to ask some questions and have some discussion.
All right, thank you very much. Tonight, as you mentioned, is the high school growth temporary mitigation plan. Tonight is really a continuation of a series of discussions and community meetings, and I wanted to just take a moment and just kind of mention those to bring you up to speed on where we are. Starting back March of 2017, we had a community engagement event at Jackson High School. It was very well attended, and it was really focused on understanding from our community what their perspectives were on how to respond to growth. At that point in time, on the table was the idea of running a bond for a new high school, as well as boundary shifts, portables, or scheduling changes. So subsequent to that, the bond with the new high school on it did not pass. And we held a board workshop in April of 18 to talk about that and to understand from you where you wanted to go with that. And my impression of that meeting is that you were kind of leaning towards a boundary portable solution, perhaps, but you wanted to hear from the community, once again, what they thought. So we brought back out to the 3 high schools in May of this year, community engagement events. Again, we're very well attended at Jackson High School, not so much at the other 2, but on balance, we got over 300 comments from the community. So from that, then to June 19th, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, we brought to you a plan on how we thought you wanted us to move forward. So tonight is and then also last week there was a board agenda setting meeting where we once again talked about it. So part of the language that we changed for this agenda item, changed it even this afternoon, is in response to some of the conversation last week. And I'll have to apologize right here because I think I was not understanding clearly until today where I think you wanted to go with tonight's conversation. So I hope I got it right. And the next 3 slides will walk you through kind of what I see you wanting to get to tonight, I hope. Okay, so the first, this slide is the original recommendation from June 19th to approve the superintendent's recommendation for developing a plan to temporarily mitigate the effects of high school enrollment growth. There's a lot in there that is not detailed, and that was in the note there. It's not a specific plan, detailed proposal. It approves proceeding to develop a plan using the boundary change option as the primary tool. So that was June 19th. Then motion made at the end of, near the end of that conversation. It was quite about an hour-long conversation. Towards the end of that, there was a motion made that the Board of Directors approves the high school enrollment growth temporary mitigation option recommended by the superintendent and direct the superintendent to present the plan details for board consideration with an altered timeline of implementation in fall of 2020. So that was at the end of the meeting on June 19th. Then the discussion was continued to tonight, which is where we're at. So what I have prepared in consultation with Dr. Cohn is a suggested alternate motion for your consideration tonight. You can certainly go with this where you want to, but this suggested alternate motion represents what I think I heard from you last Wednesday, I think it was, at the agenda setting meeting. So what this basically does is directs the superintendent to bring a proposal to you at the next meeting, which is August 28th, your next regular meeting, for your approval, defining a committee process, the guiding principles, the participants, and the timeline to basically develop a plan to temporarily mitigate the effects of the high school growth. And then this goes on, this suggested alternate motion goes on to say that the committee is to recommend revisions to high school enrollment boundaries beginning fall of 2019 to reduce enrollment at Jackson High School, along with complementary and practical program changes, portable classrooms, and minor schedule changes. So that's kind of a mouthful. It brings you up to date, I think, on where we are. So now I'm going to just take, I think, 3 slides, and I'm going to cover for you a distillation of the key concepts from the community input that we got at those 3 community meetings. The first one is around key questions, rather, from the community around boundaries or facilities. And we have a couple of others, too, coming up here in just a minute. One of those is on scheduling, and one of those is on signature programs or STEM or online courses. So basically, we're anticipating with this alternate motion that we suggested, we're anticipating a committee process that would be a boundary committee in a larger sense, but also looking at schedule changes as well as program decisions and enhancements or provisions for specific programs at specific high schools. So it would be, conceptually, it would be a big boundary committee, probably have a couple of meetings to focus on enrollments and capacities. Then it would split into 2, we're thinking. One would be looking specifically at schedule changes. The other one would be specifically looking at program-related changes for a couple of meetings, and then they would come back to a committee of the whole to figure out how all that fit together. That's conceptually how we're looking at a committee process happening. Okay, so the distillation of the community conversations into the key concepts around boundaries and facilities are listed there under those 3 bullets. We're not, by the way, at this point, planning to try to respond to these questions. We're saying these are the ones that were raised. It's anticipated that in a upcoming process that we would look at these with the boundary committee members and talk about them and kind of come to some answers in mind of the committee about these questions. And as you can see, these from a facility standpoint, I could probably take a run at these, but I know that there's, tonight, but there's some program-related and schedule-related questions that are not quite so easy to answer. Taking a look at those, I see 6 scheduling questions. Actually, they're boiled down to 6 bullets. There's probably more than 6 questions there. But these are very complex questions. And as I was looking at these, I kept, in my mind, going back to what Larry Fleckenstein presented at those community meetings, and even as far back as March 30th, 2017 at Jackson High School, and that is scheduling solutions tend to be very impactful to our community's families and their schedules, and a lot of times they're not successful because of that, because those impacts aren't fully considered before heading into those. So that's the caution I would have going into this. But nevertheless, these would be questions that we would be asking this committee to look at in the context of the other solutions. And then program-related questions, signature programs, STEM, and online courses. These, again, a distillation of the key concepts. There are 5 bullets there. Again, we would turn these over to the committee. When I say turn them over to the committee, what I've talked with a number of cabinet members. So again, what we anticipate is that when this big committee breaks into the 2 subcommittees, one on schedule, one on program, it's likely Peter Scott would be facilitating the conversation around the program-related questions, and probably he and Dana Riley Black. And then on the schedule subcommittee, that would probably be Larry Fleckenstein leading or facilitating the conversation with the subcommittee around that before it comes back to the committee of the whole. In the audience tonight, I've also asked Jim Dugan from Parametrics to listen in. He's the person that led the elementary school boundary process, and our anticipation right now is that he would likely be leading this overall process. So I wanted him to hear your comments and conversation tonight as well. All right, so now I have I have two schedules showing a implementation of the boundary process to implement in fall of 19, and then the next slide is fall of 2020. I have used the same timeline so you can kind of see how they overlap very easily. The third slide in this sequence, I have shown how how a bond 2020 April election would look like, or a process leading up to that would look in the context of these two. Again, the timeline is identical on all three slides, so you can, by flipping quickly, and I'll do that a couple of times, through the three slides, you'll see how the first and second slide, the work in those and the implications for community and board processes, how that overlays with potential bond in 2020. I think it'd be very helpful to see how that looks. So just a reminder, where you see that yellow star, it means that's where we are today. And so this schedule here shows implementation of a boundary process. And so when I say a boundary process, I mean also any changes to scheduling or a program would likely take place at that time, although I guess it depends on how extensive those changes are, and they might take longer. But boundary process implemented in fall of 19. You see a little blue X and a red X. On all three of these slides, I wanted to show you where the primary election and the general election, the primary election in August, and then the general election in November for two board positions in 2019. Two positions that are up for election. So I wanted to show you where those fall on those three slides as well. So with that, you can see that this basically has a lot of work happening between now and the end of December, because that's really when we have to have you approve those in order to have a good chance of implementing in the fall of 2019. So this means that right away after August 28th, we'll be putting that committee together and hitting the process really hard over a 2-month period, including what we're thinking of conceptually would be probably, again, around a meeting at each of the 3 high schools to share the work in progress, coming back in about November with a recommendation to the superintendent, and then very quickly after that, there's one meeting in December the board would approve. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the fall of 2020. Same timeline. Same graph of the calendar, but basically you can see that it pushes out the implementation to the fall of 2020. And there's, as you can see, a lot more time in here to have the boundary committee do its work, for the community engagement to happen. So in this scenario, we're actually anticipating that about midpoint of the boundary committee process, we would engage the community by sharing with them at open house events some of the plans that the boundary committee has come up with, and then towards the end of their process, share information, make a recommendation to the superintendent, and then get online comments, and then actually, again, anticipated in this, that the superintendent's recommendation would be published, and then once again, comments online by the community. All of that before coming to you with a first reading in May and then approval in June. So that would allow us about a year from now to have the approval by you of the results of the committee process. Implement in the fall of 2020. So once again, look at the X and the red X and the blue X. Those show that both the primary and general elections occur after the board approves, but the primary is actually right after or that time. Okay, now this is the possible April 2020 bond schedule. This is the same slide that we shared with you at your workshop in April. One of the things we focused on was the possible timeline for the next bond. So one thing I want to point out is in this bond cycle, how the board, primary, and general elections will fall in the context of community engagement timeline around this bond. So towards the end of that, community engagement is where the board elections will be. And so now I'm going to flip back and forth for just a minute to the fall of 2019 boundary implementation. All of this stuff happens about a year before the board elections and the bond election would occur. So that's what the implementation in the fall of 2019 does. The implementation of the boundaries in fall of 2020 puts all of those three processes really right on top of each other in terms of the critical activities. So I just wanted to point all that out to make sure that you were thinking of that among everything else. So now I'm going to show you some two slides showing the potential boundary revisions. And this, I'm going to use the phrase carefully, and it's up there on the slide 3 times. This is an example only of what it could look like. What we actually have done is on this, actually I'm going to, okay, so it is, this is showing the entire area of Cascade High School that is currently transported by bus to school. So you wouldn't want to, for example, move from students that currently walk to Cascade to be bused north to Everett High School. So instead of saying we would pick this area, 375 students, we are saying somewhere from this area that's outlined in red dashed lines, we would probably want to relocate about 375 students or so up to that amount to go to northward up to Everett High School. I'm
going to just do a quick footnote.
Mm-hmm.
Mike just provided you a value-loaded statement there, and that would be the type of a recommendation you'd get from a committee. Mike's showing you an example. You may, in fact, want to transport kids who are much closer to Everett High School, irrespective of whether they ride the bus. That's what the committee would be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just in
Thank
case
you. Thank you
somebody
very much.
decides to,
Yes.
take your what if as a
Correct. And even
as a leading.
I would caution you against relying on the number 375 either, because that number would be dependent on how many portables or program changes or scheduling changes we might want to implement that could reduce the number that's needed to be transported.
The solid line at the top of the graph shows the boundaries for the Everett High School, correct?
The yellow line, it's
The
fairly
solid red
faint
line.
on
The
here.
solid red line, does that show?
That's the boundary, is what she's asking, between high schools, correct?
The solid, I think it's solid yellow line are the high school boundaries. The red lines are the middle school boundaries.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Oh, I got it. So the solid yellow line, which happens to be maybe at the top of that dashed line, is the solid yellow line, correct?
Correct. And anything north of that currently goes to Everett High School.
Oh, I gotcha.
Remember, we've had that conversation. People won't understand why you would move Cascade High School out of its attendance boundary area.
I gotcha.
All right, so now I'm going to show the same kind of slide for the Jackson High School draw area. So without trying to make any value judgments here, I will say that this is the area that is shown in dash lines are the students that are currently on provided transportation to get to Jackson High School every day.
So if they're within walking distance to Jackson High School, they probably will not be bused.
No, ma'am, that is absolutely
Is
not a
that what you're
statement we
saying?
want to make.
That's just
All he's doing is show you an example.
An example.
That's all it is an example.
Because you have, with the dash lines, you have kind of indicated.
Yeah, no, don't even, I'm
even go
cautioning you not to go there. This
Okay.
is simply an example
An
of
example.
what that kind of thing could look like.
Okay, an example. Okay, gotcha.
It's neither a good one nor a bad one. It's not
Yes.
recommended. It's not, it's just
An
an example to show you, because once upon a time you asked, what might it look like? This is an example of what it could look like. But we've not formed parameters, we've not formed a committee, so we just want to show you what, because you asked, what could that look like? This is what it could look like.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, so this slide shows the next steps that would come, assuming that you do want us to proceed in some manner tonight. And again, I would say that the implementation in fall of 19 is dependent on your telling us that is when we need to implement. That could be changed to 2020 if you say to do that. And the measures to be implemented at that time could be more than boundary revisions. So with that, then I'll go to the objectives for tonight's meeting is to distill for you the key concepts for the community input that we got, and then also to ask that you consider approving language to develop a temporary mitigation plan responding to the projected growth. We would, in addition to your approval of some language giving us some direction tonight, I would like you to also, if you would, try to indicate for us when the implementation date is, if it's fall of 2019 or fall of 2020.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Carol Heroes, do we know? Debbie? Okay.
Really not hearing anything though.
Okay, Carol, we're just going to talk about the high school mitigation plan.
You're just going to have to operate as best you can.
Yeah. Directors, do you have questions, comments, concerns?
I do appreciate the stressing of example, 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 and the clarifying statement, because at one of the community meetings we had, there was an example of, 375 from here, but it wasn't clear an example. So a lot of people went, wait, what do you mean I'm moving to Cascade? And so I appreciate the fact that example, example, example.
Mm-hmm.
And I the points for the community, I think it is good for us as a board to decide, really give some guidance, especially because I have concerns about some of those questions about 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, because so many students are not straight grade level, since we really do try to teach kids where they are, having times of day that it might be a 9th grader. So there might be many kids at a high school that is irrelevant because they're taking half of 10th grade, half of 11th grade in a 12th grade class or something, some such makeup. And so I just think based on that, I'm still leaning towards more community engagement, more ideas, so we have dates on when things could change at Cascade, when could things change at Everett, having that 2020 date. And if we're planning a bond at the same time, the earliest it could open is 2024 if we have a vote in 20, so that the community is engaged in, this is a temporary plan. What is the community willing to what is best for the students in a temporary time frame? Because when the new high school gets built, we're going to be moving a whole lot of kids around. And I think that I really want time to really say, what is best. We need to move, we need to add portables, we need to look at times and have time for people to decide that. And that the last thing, I have heard from both Cascade parents and Jackson parents that their kids are in marching band or cut sports about what if our child has to move. What do we do about our child? And I said, well, that hasn't been decided yet. And I think that there are more questions than we know. And I don't think that 2 months of a community getting together a couple times allows for all those questions to really get funneled out. We learned with elementary school, we cannot make everyone happy. But how do we move in elementary school 1,100 kids with many unhappy versus a bunch of high school kids that and everybody unhappy or something. So I'm still leaning towards 2020 as an implementation.
I would agree with you, everything that you just said. 2020 is looking like you have the opportunity to get more community involved in your discussion. And I think that's always best. In this particular element, we've seen in the elementary school boundary process, then the more you can get your community engaged into what you are facing. And then, excuse me, the outcome of that process, the better you have. Yes, there's no way that we can, we can't make everybody happy. We probably won't be able to do that, but we can ensure that the process is engaging in the community and that we've given people the opportunity to discuss it and talk about it. And I think that's always very, very good. And so at this point in time, I look at the implementation boundaries in the fall of 2020 as one to open the door for more community involvement in the entire process. It would mean, though, that we're still going to be faced with overcrowding at one high school. But we do have a way ahead in that regard as far as we know that we have to house students. And we know where we can house students. And we know how we can house students. So with that being said, until we've made the decision, that's going to be our modus operation.
Because one of my questions was, for cafeteria room at Jackson, is there tenting available that can go over the covered area where kids sit outside now, tenting that could be completely walled? What are all the options to accommodate children at Jackson versus moving versus whatever? I just think that's why there's so many questions.
And we do have to we have to consider that, but we have to also consider the stress it places on staff and the additional staff that may be necessary in order to meet that concern. And we have to make sure we're ready to implement any kind of changes that's necessary for that challenge.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think the timeline for a 2019 actually just doesn't give the boundary committee enough time to do a robust job on considering options, answering questions. I definitely learned a little bit from the elementary school revision process that people who live in the Mill Creek area are very committed to staying in the Mill Creek area. They've often moved there for the schools specifically to be in that area. And I think that although we are now faced with boundary revisions, no matter what, that's a known fact, trying to work through an option that keeps families where they want to be until, and I'm not sure we should call it a temporary plan because this is what we have to do until we can build a high school. And at this point, we don't have that option. So this is the plan for the future until we have other opportunities and options to ask voters. So I would be very interested in, there have been a lot of community suggestions and ideas, and some of those are very intriguing and I think worth exploring. Some of them are just not doable. So for example, building a new middle school and using Heatherwood, that's not an option. We don't have funds to build a new a middle school. And I'm just curious if maybe we can start addressing some of the ones that we know. So for example, keeping kids in switching grades when every school in the South End is at capacity. There's just no room to put more kids in elementary school and those kinds of things. So just something to think about as we move forward. So any further, Carol, do you have something that you would like to add?
Yeah, I heard Tracy's comments and yours. I didn't hear anything Pam said. Just generally, I really would prefer to see a September 2019 date, but when I look at the timeline, it just seems way too condensed to be able to do an effective job in that time frame. September 2020, that's 2 years out. That feels like a long time to leave people kind of in possible limbo, but recognizing I think as you said, Caroline, this may not be a temporary plan. It could be long-term based on the ability to pass a bond and get a new high school built. I think that we do need to take time and really sort through all of the options and come up with a very sound plan. So I'd love to say we could do this by September 2019, but it just doesn't seem like it's very feasible.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we,
Postpone the motion, and that's the motion that's on the table. You need to decide what you want to do with it, because at this point it comes off the table, and that's the motion that's in front of you.
okay.
Restate the motion that I stated on June 19th.
Yeah, Mike put it in there for you so that you would see it.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so I would like to remove the motion from the table. Is that?
It's not on the table. It's a postponed motion, so it's before you.
So we need to vote on it.
You either vote on it or you amend it. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to amend the motion on the table to utilize the language that Mr. Gunn suggested with a date of 2020.
So that it, okay, so I'll second, and I'll wait till discussion.
Is there discussion regarding the motion that's on the table?
So my question would be that at our summer workshop, we would have time to work on this to present at the August 28th meeting. Is that what this is implying?
No, it's not.
So how will the board of directors direct, are we determining so I'm confused by the August 28th timeline that's in here.
The August 28th timeline is your regular board meeting.
Okay.
And that's when Mike would bring you the work of the committee, the makeup of the committee, the guiding principle, all those things in that list for you to determine approval or adjustments to before we would launch the process.
So the question is, do we want to amend that August 28th date as well as because if we push the implementation date out to 2020, there is not as much need to do so much work over the summer when it's difficult to engage people and get people into a process.
What people are you thinking would be the process?
Like the parents that you might be nominated, might be nominating to be on the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, there won't be any of that going on until you approve it on August 28th.
Oh.
We'd be forming the plan to do this work,
Okay.
not initiating the
Then
work.
I keep my amended motion as stated.
Okay.
Okay, we're changing the date to implementation of 2020.
Can we not just make the approval start as of today for the implementation of the boundaries according to the schedule planned here?
No.
Can't do that.
Well, you could, but you don't have a boundary plan. I mean.
No, but
I'm not
he's
sure.
going to come back.
Can you restate your question? I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking or suggesting.
Can we just take out the date August 28th and direct the superintendent to bring a proposal to the board for approval, defining the process, with the process defined, guiding principle defined, and so that the committee could recommend the revisions to the high school enrollment boundaries beginning the fall 2019 to reduce everything in there, so that the implementation starts in the fall of 2020.
Right, I understand what she's saying. Do you understand that?
She's
just saying remove the August 28th date.
I understand that, but I think I heard Dr. Cohn say that the committee process, guiding principles, participants, and timeline. We have the timeline. We don't have the guiding principles or participants or process yet. Is that?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Did we? And so I just want clarity.
I think it would be a good idea to ask Director Lassane what that effect of passing that motion would be.
Is that you can get started on it now?
Well, they would already because it's due August 28th.
So you pretty much if we use the same guiding principles, we don't have to use the participants, but that we have established for the elementary boundaries, would that not work?
No,
Okay.
very different, I think.
Yeah, I think the
Okay.
student population is different.
Yeah.
And
I mean, some of it, there's definitely going to be some overlap, I think, but there's a lot of other considerations in a high
Okay.
school population that are different from an elementary school population.
Okay, then I'll stick with with how it's worded. then.
with how it's worded with the beginning fall of 2020.
Carol, do you have any further comments?
No, I don't.
If no further comments, we move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries.
Yes, so you've amended the motion that was on the table, that was before you before. Now you've replaced it with this motion, which has the August 28 presentation to you and fall 2020. Now, is that in fact what you want us to do? You have to vote on that. Seems like it's two
Just
steps,
did.
but what you did was amended the one that was.
We amended the motion.
But you didn't pass it.
But we didn't.
Okay, we are going to vote on the motion now,
As amended, yes.
as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Now the motion carries.
Carol. Did we hear Carol?
Didn't need a first or a second because that was in at the previous meeting. There's-
Oh, I'm so glad we have
Right.
Parliamentarian.
a super, yeah,
Right.
parliamentarian that knows Robert's rules
did we
really
hear-
well.
Here, Carol's.
Carol did not vote.
Carol abstained. Okay.
I didn't abstain. You guys cut out at that very moment. So I didn't hear it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we voted to
What's your vote?
we voted to have the superintendent present with us a plan with proposal, participants and everything, August 28th with implementation, September of 20 was the amended motion. And the three of us voted yes, so it passes.
Okay, I would vote yes as well, but might be too late now.
It's good.
Technology problems. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move to section 13.0, new business. We have a policy first to review, I believe, and I'm guessing Mr. Fleckenstein is going to walk us through that.
Well, tonight I bring before you the fourth in a series of policy revisions that began in your last board meeting and was adopted. Three of them were adopted through your consent agenda this evening. So the proposed revisions to policy 3223, freedom of assembly, are provided this evening to comply with substitute Senate Bill 5064 that amended Chapter 28A 600 RCW in the most recent legislative session. In this bill, the legislature found that freedom of expression through school-sponsored media is a fundamental principle in our democratic society granted by the United States Constitution. Further, the legislature expressed its intent to protect freedom of expression through school-sponsored media to encourage public school students to become educated, informed, and responsible members of society. The revisions that have been made to this policy are taken directly from the language that was recently added to the referenced RCW. Proposed revisions to policy 3223, freedom of assembly, have been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Director Lassane?
None whatsoever.
No questions. With that, we'll move it to second reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have 13.02, adoption of the operating budget for fiscal year 2018-19, first reading. Mr. Moore is going to give us a brief overview.
Yes, thank you. And first of all, I'd like to compliment our entire team here because everybody contributes to the creation of an annual budget. And this year was a challenge, I think, at least to say, considering all the late outcomes from the state. I'd like to thank Ruth Floyd, our budget director, as well as Karen Buckman and William Sorensen, who work on it directly. But Becky and everybody here along the line has to deal with the budget. I'm going to move quickly through kind of a familiar story, but I think the story is always important for those who may be observing this to understand the numbers, and try to emphasize a few quick points, and then Ruth is going to go through the actual numbers as we go forward. So first of all, as I noted here in the objectives, is to really kind of review the legislative outcomes, kind of celebrate the budget development process that we've grown to do a little better each year, and then we'll talk more about the nuts and bolts of the numbers. Would you like me to pause, or are we okay? I'll just keep going. Okay, so again, legislative outcomes, budget development process, the work of the FAC and SLT, and then a fund-by-fund overview. We know that one of the unusual things that occurred in the latter moments of the legislative session, or the unexpected things, was with a more favorable revenue forecast, the state legislature decided to fully fund the allocations, which was supposed to happen over a 2-year period. Kind of the unusual thing that there is some disagreement about is they maintained a 3.1% cap on salary increases with some exclusions, such as steps or added FTE or additional professional development days. And that disagreement is really a conversation I think that's going in every bargaining unit across the state. And so we will see how that plays out, but that's what our belief is moving forward. So what that does is it provides a significant influx of new revenue that you can't spend. But that's the good news, because going forward, we're going to see that the way they structured our levy and the phase out of regionalization, we're going to need that to offset future deficits. So the balance of that projection is what you'll see in some of our estimates today. The OSTPI did create a committee on the workday, and we're pleased to have Dr. Cohn be a member of that committee. And we need to help provide some clarity and definition for the definition of basic education. I'm going to say tweaked the special education multiplier, which means they provided a little bit more funding in the order of $500,000 to $600,000 to offset what is a multi-million-dollar shortfall. And they moved up a new accounting system, and again, compliment HR and fiscal team for working out how to accomplish that, first in a short-term solution, but more strategically over next year, coming up with a kind of a win-win, making lemonade out of lemons with a better and more simplified accounting structure. And we also know that they cut the property tax for 1 year, and they did not fix the levy cap. So moving forward, we've talked about how that creates inequities, and it creates inequities in terms of even how we're having conversations with our labor partners around the future resources. So Edmonds and Marysville, for example, Edmonds and Mukilteo are able to access a lot more levy dollars currently than Everett is, and also North Shore as well. So we're in a competitive environment where our resources are more limited in our conversations. We've talked before about how big the cut is. Relatively, if you looked at what we were allowed to collect in 18 versus 19, it's about half. So that is just to emphasize where our structural deficit is moving forward. As I stated, we'd like to celebrate the budget development process. It's been a long-standing emphasis on saucer outcomes, on student data, and on your strategic guidance for us as we develop the budget each year. And it's always been a challenge to align saucers because of the time it takes to accomplish them with the budget process. But I think earlier in the year, we spent some time talking about how the budget is a document and the document is a plan. And within that, we build the capacity for additions or new things that may come out later in the saucer process. So we're really focused on this budget in a preliminary sense as a plan. And also we know that down the road, some of the elements of the plan may or may not be implemented based upon how much resources become available. The work of the FAC, we want to again thank all the community members, the students, our association representatives, and of course our own internal staff for participating in that. They, along with our superintendent's leadership team sorted and sifted and have a list of recommendations that we looked at with you back in March. And you can see that they have different origins and not, so all of these are integrated within the budget document. And we also participated with our both groups, both the FAC and the SLT, in really getting us culturally to understand that we're in a circumstance of declining resources and rising costs, and that in the short term, to make things sustainable, we have to be very focused on what we invest in. And through that, really, we saw what came to the top was school safety, and the next two are supporting one-to-one. We know we have to do curriculum adoptions, but other things need to be weighed in as we begin to find out if we can correct the inequity of the levy formula and other factors. So before I turn it over to Ruth, I just wanted to make a couple of observations. One of the legislative changes that you'll see within F196, the F195, is a 4-year budget projection, and we only had the structure provided to us, I don't know, if at most a couple of weeks ago, and it's a standardized format. So the structure of this is different than the language we've been talking about. Well, when we've been showing our community and our legislatures really had to do with revenues and expenditures as a result of legislative actions. What it didn't build in is our fund balance that we built up over time. These documents build that in, so based upon the expenditure patterns, we can last a little longer by draining our savings account down to the 6% versus where we're at. That's one observation you'll see. Also, understand that the assumptions within the general fund, in particular, continue to assume it's a $1.50 levy, that we're at the lesser of, and that we don't have access to those resources, and also assumes that for the first year we're going to have a 3.1% increase in across the board salaries, and in future years it would more align with 2.5% to 3.5%. Those outcomes can be different between now and August, and we just need to recognize that the numbers may change based upon what we learn over the next few weeks or 6 weeks at most. So with that, I just wanted to provide that clarity and turn it over to Ruth to go over the numbers.
Hello again. As discussed during the financials review, our ending fund balance is expected to be approximately $23.6 million. Our next year revenues are anticipated at about $321 million, with expenditures under that at just under $310 million, which means that the projected ending balance in 2019 would go up significantly to around just below the $35 million mark. And that, as you'll see later, you'll see that that will sustain us over several years, or 3 years. But at that point, we need to be able to, we need to think about either anticipate getting additional revenues from the state by them fixing the levy issue, or doing cuts in 2021 in order to prepare for getting that expenditures even or less than revenues in the future. Our beginning fund balance, as you can see, is the expected to be the 23.6 million. Of that, the unassigned is expected to be around 18.5 million, and then with the growth in ending fund balance in 2019, unassigned will grow significantly. And of course those restrictions depend on how much of the grants that we spend in any particular year, and so that can grow in restriction depending on whether we spend all the grant money or not, because we're allowed to carry that over, but it has to be shown as a restricted fund balance. Our student enrollment is expected to grow 76 students on October 1 head count, but that is compared to budget. And our it's actually up 200 from our actual October 1, because as we discussed earlier, our enrollment was under budget this year. And so it's actually about 200 above that we're expecting to come in on October 1. Our annual average FTE, including running start, is expected to be at about 20,189. That's 90 above where we budgeted, and it's about 250 above actual this year. And that is an annual average. And this is the first slide of what Jeff was talking about. The state has mandated that we provide them with a 3-year forecast. So they want to see our current budget year plus 3 years looking forward. And we expect our enrollment to increase about 800 students, student FTE, over the course of 3 years, a couple hundred in 19-20, about 300 in 2021 and 21-22. And then for staffing purposes, we are expecting significantly more staff next year. Part of that is enrollment. Part of that is hiring additional math specialists in order to bring that K-3 ratio down. It also includes quite a bit of categorical money. We've had an influx of restricted funds such as LAP and EL and CTE money, and so some of that is our staff in those areas. The one administrative position is actually a transfer. It's not an actual person increase. It's a transfer of a classified administrator to a certificated administrator in the Human Resources Department. And then classified staff, we're also expecting increases. Much of that relates to special education and categorical programs. And then here is our multi-year forecast for staff. I would say that the 118 over 3 years is most likely a conservative estimate. We always end up having additional unanticipated additions to staff in the categorical areas that I didn't account for here. I kept that pretty much flat. The larger increase in 1920 is due to our opening of elementary 18. And enrollment, of course, and then there's also a larger increase in 21-22 because the way that enrollment increased, if we go back a couple of slides, you'll see that enrollment in the elementary area grade levels increase more in 21-22, and we have a higher staffing ratio for elementary, and so you're going to see more staff put into that because you have fewer kids to each staff member. And then budgeted revenues you can see, as we expected, due to the levy cut and an influx of state salary funds, local taxes are significantly decreasing, and state general purpose and state special purpose are significantly increasing. And then here's graphically what those revenues look like. Let's see, the prior state was 71%, and here expected next year 77.5%, and then local is 12.7% here, and last year it was 18.9%. So you can see that kind of shift in where our funds are coming in, but the pie is also getting larger. The legislature also requires that we provide you information on how we spend our maintenance supplies and operating costs, affectionately known as MSOC. And we get about $24 million from the state next year. We anticipate that much from the state. And we'll spend about that much on items such as anything from professional development, utilities, all of those things that are not related to staff. We look at expenditures in many different ways. We cut the pie in many different ways, and the first way is program, and this is just a summary by program. And you can see that basic education has increased, as well as state special education expenditures, and career and technical program has also significantly increased, because remember, it's not just general education that receives those extra salary dollars, it's all of the state programs like CTE, like LAP and EL, transitional bilingual. And then the graphic version of that, we're spending about 72% in basic ed and 9.7% in categorical programs. I think I noted what we have had last year on there as well. Maybe I didn't, but it's actually, basic ed is actually down 1.9% from the current year budget, and it's because of the legislative focus on the prescriptive funding that we talked about in CT and categorical funding. And then this is breaking the expenditures down in more detail by program, and you can see those details here. You can also see on the second page of that the significant amount of money in LAP and transitional bilingual programs. And then another way we break down expenditures is by activity. Teaching and teaching support is the crux of our business. That's where we spend most of our money. And we had budget to budget, we have about 24 million more. That's 11% change, and that makes sense with the math specialists, the enrollment increases, and those teaching and teaching support areas in which we focus. And then other support activities such as custodians, we're hiring additional custodians, additional groundskeepers. We also have higher property insurance rates that came through this year, and then they're growing again next year. And then graphically here is it broken down by activity. 74.7% was what we spent in teaching and teaching support. And this year, or next year, we're anticipating it to be even higher than that at 75.5%. And then school and central administration are actually down as on a percentage basis from budgeted last year. And then the third way we look at expenditures is by object, and so you can see that those additional funds going into certificated salaries, classified salaries, and an employee benefits as a result of additional staff as well as enrollment. And supplies and materials are also up. Purchase services and those other MSOC dollars have significant percentage increases, and some of that is due to the categorical programs where we don't have specific plans yet on how that additional influx of funds will happen. They will provide plans and move forward with plans for that money as throughout the summer and into the fall. So I usually put a lot of those funds that we don't know how they're going to be spent into MSOC, and so that's why you're seeing more of a significant increase perhaps in supplies, materials, and purchase services than you may have in the past. And then expenditures by object here, you can see, of course, most of what we do here is salaries and benefits. And then purchase services also increased due to the insurance costs that I mentioned before. And here's our general fund forecast out 3 additional years beyond the budget year. And that assumes that we make no changes, but we all know that we will not let fund balance at the end of 21-22 get down to 1.4%, I think is what that says. We will, be talking with our legislators about the levy, and we will be hoping that there's a fix put in place on that end, as well as hopefully the regionalization where they're phasing out the salary dollars that we get over the period of about 4 years. Hopefully we can get a fix on that. If that does not happen, then in 2021 we'll need to be thinking about some cuts. And then as far as the other funds, Associated Student Body, we have an anticipated ending fund balance in 2019 of about $754,000. And our forecast, multi-year forecast for that, assumes that will keep happening, that expenditures will outpace revenues, and that will keep reducing our fund balance until we hit a plateau of about 20%. Of expenditures. And then debt service fund, we are expecting to increase our ending fund balance compared to where we are currently, but that is because we'll be selling two bonds. We anticipate selling 2 bonds, one in the fall and one in the spring, and so those bond revenues will go into the 18-19 fiscal year. And then for debt service multi-year forecast, the principal and interest payments will increase with the issuance of the bonds. And then the debt structure honors the stable tax rate and is scheduled out well beyond these forecasts, but you can see the revenues and expenditures, how they might play out over the next 4 years. Capital Projects Fund, we have a anticipated beginning fund balance of about $22 million and then an ending balance of $38 million. Those, and then you may have noticed that the beginning balance of $22 million is quite a bit less than the ending fund balance of budgeted in 17-18. That's because we anticipated the $50 million bond sale this fiscal year, but it's not happening. It's happening in the fall instead, which pushes it out into the next fiscal year. And these are some of the major projects that we plan on doing next year, not the least of which is the elementary. We're accelerating the new elementary 18 and North Middle School modernization. And then the multi-year forecast for Capital Projects Fund assumes that we will quickly bring down that balance on those projects that we discussed in 2019-20, and then bringing it down in 21-22 to about $4 million fund balance. And then Transportation Vehicle Fund, it just anticipates a slight increase in state depreciation each year as we bring on more buses, but the balances stay very stable. And then our multi-year forecast, again, quite stable. Oop, I went too quick. Well, that's all I had for you, but I would love to answer questions if you have any. I know I went a little bit quick, but I can go back to any slides.
Thank you. There are a lot of slides and a lot of numbers there. Directors.
I just have one question. On 2 of the slides, it mentions a 2 million contingency.
Yes.
My nose stepped up right when I said that. Where is that found in? Is that in the calculation?
It's in the balances, and okay. I wanted to highlight it just because that portion of our contingency varies every year based on the annual operating plan and some of the things we didn't implement into the budget for implementing next year, but those that we add into the budget and have revenue offset in case the board and the superintendent decide to move forward on those. And so there is about $2 million in contingency, not only on the expenditure side, but on the revenue side. That doesn't affect the bottom line, doesn't affect the fund balance, but if you decide to move forward with any of that, it would bring down the fund balance.
And then just one statement, the fact that I actually do like the 4-year forecast, because it does show us that the state might give us a windfall with rabbit ears, but it's not a plan of money delivery. It's a one-time and how we have to manage that and where we are going to come short and why there is urgency always with our work with the legislature. So thank you. I mean, it's actually a kind of a nice plus. So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Carol, do you have any questions?
I don't. I had sent in a question about the roll forward of the capital balance, which was answered, and I think I heard it explained right now as well. I had a question on the declining high school enrollment, or between years, but then realized we'd kind of overestimated this year, so that explains the decrease. So those are really my only questions.
Okay. I had one question on slide 34.
Okay.
What is capital outlay, I guess?
Capital outlay is a very narrow definition of equipment that we capitalize it's actually $5,000 per each unit or more. And so not very much of what we spend out of general fund falls into that. So all of your Chromebooks and your laptops, and they're always under that capitalization threshold. But it doesn't mean we don't tag them and track them. It just means that accounting-wise, they fall under supplies.
What would be an example of some items that, just out of curiosity, that the district purchases?
A large dishwasher or refrigerator that costs over $5,000 for food services.
Would
production oven or
maintenance?
Something like that. Sometimes vehicles do. Sometimes maintenance equipment does.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay. Thank you very much to both of you for the overview. We're good to move on.
Jeff, what's the next step in the process, please?
The next step will be advertising for the public hearing.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry. We've got the thing turned all the way up.
The next step is to advertise 2 weeks ahead and have our adoption and public hearing scheduled for August 28th is our date, right?
Yes.
So
there's a requirement to publish multiple times?
Correct.
And it's a publication of the action, the final adoption?
Correct. Public hearing and adoption.
Do you expect any significant changes in the budget between the first reading and the second reading?
I don't expect any significant changes. However, we are in conversations with our largest labor group, and if things concluded in a way that we would need to make adjustments, then we would make them. If it's not timely, we have to move forward by state law and adopt the budget on the 28th and work through within the plan that we have adopted by you publicly.
So there's a possibility that we would need to bring the board a budget extension after the adoption of this budget if there were significant enough changes after it's adopted.
Right. If our conversations or if there was some significant change, we would have to have that in place by early August, the 15th or so.
And that would be triggered by really an expenditure adjustment of substantive size, not a revenue adjustment.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now at section 13.3, which is discussion regarding our after-school program. Did I?
Longfellow.
Oh, it is.
We put them in there in the order that you moved them.
I thought, for some reason, I read that wrong. Okay. Okay, this is the authorization to award bid for Longfellow site redevelopment. And I think the directors wanted to have some conversation around this. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up and see if directors want to share concerns, ask questions.
I guess my biggest concern of why I just wanted a little discussion is in talking to Mr. Gunn today, the estimate that was done many years ago of $1.3 million now being over $2 million, and just what really would be the opportunity cost taken from our schools for that $2 million price. Then also, we discussed, that the total cost of redeveloping it, if it was to be classrooms, if it was to be offices, if it was to be early learning, would definitely be something would have to be out for a bond, because the price would be just in the multi-millions. And so I just wonder, with the cost to maintain, yes, that is taking out of our classrooms too, but it's not as much over many, many years as the $2 million to remove it. And I just want to have a good conversation about really what are we all thinking, that originally I think I was for it because of the cost to maintain it for the schools, but now looking at this increased price, and I think it really is because of the economy and time, it caused me pause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the concerns that I do have.
You speak more into your mic there. Sorry.
One of the concerns that I do have, having had the opportunity to work with the cleanup of a Superfund organization once in my past life. And what ended up happening is that my organization that I worked for continued to put it off and put it off and put it off. And it continued to grow because hazardous waste is something that will never get cheaper to remediate. It will never get cheaper to remediate. And the costs continue to go up, as well as what ends up happening is the requirement in how you can dispose of, and the requirements for permitting and putting individuals in positions in which they're involved in hazardous material continues to escalate. These types of costs will never come down, never. They will only go up. And we need to, at one point in time, make the decision that, is it better to make the change at a time in which you can truly afford it for the sake of individuals' well-beings, for students' well-beings, than to put it off until it gets to be at a point where you can't afford it anymore. You just can't afford the remediation. And then sites then tend to sit empty forever. At this point in time, we have asbestos, and yes, it's not anywhere near it's not anywhere near the situations in which I was involved in. But we have asbestos, we have oil contamination, we have a lot of things that those costs will never go down. And we need to take action on it as quickly as we can so that we can move forward.
Well, and I do appreciate the Historical Society asking for a walkthrough if there is anything in there that could be salvaged.
Yeah, they already did that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's where, but I do like that idea of just if there is something in there that could really be salvaged, because it
has some
yeah
historical significance in our community.
And also I was, in talking to Mr. Gunn today, I appreciate the community of Everett and what Senator Jackson did for coming from this community, what he did for this state. We named a school after him. Everett Community College has a building or something named after him. There's an honor. He will not be forgotten in this community if this school is no longer there. His presence will be eternal in this community because of the other things that have been done in this community. So it's just sort of, I just wanted a conversation.
Carol, do you have comments?
I do. I wanted to clarify, though, something that Tracy said. She said that the $1.3 million estimate was done some time ago, but I'd understood that that had been brought current brought to current costs. Can you confirm that, Mike?
The 1.3 million, I think it's $1,352,000. That was actually an estimate at the time of the bid, so it was last week. But it was arrived at by using an estimate that was about a year old, and then we predicted what the escalation on that type of work would be, and we were obviously too low.
Okay, so I misunderstood, so thank you for the clarity.
I will point out that the value of the bid award, we believe, is a reflection of the true, accurate value of the work. It will not get any cheaper than that.
Carol, did you want to continue?
Oh, sorry. I truly am having a hard time hearing that. Every time I move, it cuts out a bit. From my perspective, I recognize that there are costs to retaining the property as it is, but I'm struggling with a bid that comes in 56% over even our architect's estimate. And I'm not sure of the urgency of the project. I know we picked up extra parking when we built the CRC, extra parking for the Memorial Stadium. And I realize there's a risk against future cost escalations, but I would prefer that we take another look at not necessarily improving the property ourselves, but possibly looking at marketing it again. And also just looking at the proposed budget that we just looked at a few minutes ago. Capital fund at the end of 22 is projected to be $4 million, which is not much if we don't continue to pass a bond or do other things. So I think there's also an eye on just kind of wisely spending our funds.
Yeah, I concur with Carol, and I guess Tracy, in terms of the $2 million price tag really caught me by surprise, and it's caused me pause to think about spending that kind of money on essentially parking. I know we have site cleanup to do. I also, I guess, feel that we might have opportunities to look at less traditional ways to market the building. We have quite a few partnerships in our community where we share costs on things. I have a feeling that taxpayers and voters would not understand spending $2 million to pull down a building and then going out for a bond a year later and asking them for money to build buildings. I understand there's many nuances that probably most community members don't understand unless they have taken the time to learn a whole lot about that building. It is a building that's in very poor condition, and that does make this a very difficult decision to think about whether to try and maintain that building or to tear it down because of the cost to do so. I'm less concerned about the cost of maintaining it over the cost of tearing down, just because the discrepancy between the two numbers is rather significant.
May I comment?
Yes.
I look at the cost of $2 million. That building is roughly 3 stories high. It's made of reinforced concrete. It has asbestos. It has oil contamination in its basement. It has a lot of other things. I do agree that to try and salvage some of the historical value out of the building is very appropriate. I think it lends itself to being able to be done. But I look at the cost of $2 million for that building, and I do not see that that is excessive for the remediation work that's necessary for it, for the redevelopment of the site and what is called out in the redevelopment plan. In addition to the building, I think now is the best opportunity before it continues to age and continues to grow in expense to demolish that building. is it is time to take action on it now. If we do not take action on it now, next year it will be another 25% or so greater. If we wait 2 more years, it'll be another 50% greater. Time is what is causing the price to go up. The $1.3 million, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but this estimate was developed back early part of last year, or was it before then? And can you give me, at one particular point in time, we saw a number that was less than that, and it had escalated to that, 1.3 million in a short period of time. Can you give me a timeline as to when that price was generated? And in the back of my mind, I remember a number in the 800s, but I don't remember when that was. So can you give me a timeline of when those estimates were developed?
Sure. The estimate that you're thinking of was about a little bit over a year ago, as I remember it. It was around the time that we got the authorization to call for bids, which was, I think, April of last year. So I can tell you that the progression of costs, the estimate of costs on this project have continually escalated, and that is what will happen. And so I could go back in time to when we were first, so by the way, the first time that we really seriously considered and started to put in plan and put in action a plan that would end up with us vacating that building was about 11 years ago, when we were going through the programming and feasibility study process for a consolidated central office. So at about that time, we started to think and talk about, if we did a central facility, a central office facility, and it did not include the Longfellow building, what would we do with it? So we started thinking, even back then, about 11 years ago, about what we would do and how much it would cost. So the figure of 700 or 800, I think it was in the upper 700,000s. I would say that was probably around the time that we moved in here, about 4 years ago, that we thought it was going to cost about that much. So I can just tell you that the costs of the dealing, as you say, with the hazardous materials has gone up, and also I think the biggest change in that has affected prices is the market right now. I really do not anticipate that in the future construction costs will be lower than they are today.
Well, and I do appreciate too that the slides you have in here, we did market this for 42 months.
We did not.
We did not?
Yes, we did.
Not actively.
I
42
think it would
months?
be a good idea to have Mike show you the data that he put together.
Okay.
When you gave us some indication that we might be pulling this off the consent agenda, he gathered a fair amount of information and provided some updates and answered a number of questions. And I think probably it wouldn't be a bad idea for him to walk quickly through the material so that you're operating off of the same information. You've been asking him questions at different times, and I think it's a good idea that everybody gets up to speed. That's kind of a concern that I've got right now. We've got some different interpretations of things that we've heard, and I'd like Mike to share with you the facts that he's pulled together for all of you, given the different times you've asked questions. If that would be okay with you all.
I don't need a presentation, but if you would like one, then.
Can he speak up a bit when he?
He can. He'll elevate his voice for you.
Use his playground voice.
I will certainly do that. Carol, can you hear me now? Carol? Carol?
I think you're gonna have to do the best you can, Mike.
Okay, I'll do the best I can.
You cut out behind that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and review fairly quickly. It's about 12 or 14 slides, and I will say right off the bat, there is a dollar figure in here that is inaccurate. I made a mistake, and I'll point it out. It's on the second slide. It is the I'm sorry, no, it's on a subsequent slide. I'll get to it. Okay, so tonight we're asking you to consider authorizing an award of the bid to Taylor's Excavators. They were the low bidder, just over $2 million, the apparent low responsible bidder. One other bid received that wasn't too far away from that, and that's what really leads me to believe that the bid that we got was a good bid. If there was no other bidders, or if there was a lot larger gap between this low bid and the second low bid, then I would question that. But it's a good thing that we've got two bids and that they're relatively close. I mentioned the volatile construction market makes cost estimating difficult. I could go through the contract requirements. I would just say that we have taken an extremely careful approach to looking at the historical character, documenting it in various ways, and complying with all of the SEPA requirements. We've really done a lot on this project to make sure that we've met all of those requirements. So I won't go through those in a lot of detail. The Longfellow chronology, the 2000, going down to near the bottom, this is where, by the way, I was thinking of the that it was in around 2007 that we looked at the programming study that completed it on a consolidated central administration building. So that tells you about 11 years we've been looking at doing this or something like this. You can see that going through. The marketing began originally in about 2014, the whole process where we went through and looked at all of our properties in the district, how we're using those, and we had community meetings and walkthroughs by the community, tours of all of our facilities, and basically said we were putting together this matrix that talks about the the current, medium, and long-term use of all of their facilities. And so we got a tremendous amount of input on, as you can imagine, on all of them, but especially on the Educational Service Center on Colby, as well as Longfellow. So what we ended up doing from this is marketing both the Service Center and the Longfellow building very actively. And this is our real estate agents contacting people that they know that are interested and doing a lot of really daily work to actively market these properties for about 4 months. In that time, we structured a process to develop a request for proposals. We gave it to everybody that we knew of, and we said their timeline is you have to submit it by this date. It's about 2.5 months out, and then we will evaluate the proposals and let you know what all is happening. For the Service Center, I think we got 8 or 9 proposals, and for the Longfellow, I think in that time period we got 1 letter of interest from the Hand Up project that turned out to be not a financially viable proposal. So that was about the first 4 months of that 42 months. The other 38 months, we kept it open. That is, we kept accepting offers and evaluating them, and that's where Trimark Development came in with the housing proposal. And then ultimately the Everett Museum of History came in with their proposal. And that one really took us about 8 months to get through with the museum folks until ultimately they withdrew their offer and that they had found a different facility. So we really did market this and kept open. And I would even say if somebody came in today and made an offer, we would certainly be listening to them and reading what they gave us. And that is how the museum offer came in. At that time, we were not what you would call actively out there knocking on doorbells and marketing the property, but we were open to letters of interest and had an opportunity for anyone to submit offers. So that's kind of how that process worked. This is the slide that has the incorrect error. That 255,000 should be 155. I'll get that changed afterwards. So again, we're going through a lot of the historical mitigation. We plan to put this interpretive sign. We've already submitted all of this documentation to the City of Everett permitting staff. This is a list right here on this slide of the items identified by the fire department and the Everett Historical Commission that they want us to salvage, or we've already got plans to go ahead and carefully remove those and store them for a couple weeks and until they can come and get them. We have pictures of these items, and we've documented this from a long time ago. And then just a reminder on the last 3 slides that we have really 3 really good examples of historical renovations that we've previously participated in. On every one of those, I would say absolutely the cost to do a sensitive historical renovation is going to cost more than building a brand new building of the same size. So that's the challenge that we have in ultimately us or anyone else doing a historical renovation on that building. The other thing that building has going for it, if you want to call it that, is it's a very functionally inefficient building. It has very wide hallways and very large stairways, 3 of them inside the building. So you spend the money to renovate the entire building, you only get the use of a portion of that building because a good percentage of it is taken up by circulation space that you can never reuse unless you're going to gut the entire building inside. And then what you end up with is the frame of a building to restore and support structurally on the outside. And then the question is, how far do you go with the renovation of that building? Because over time, if you look at the northern facade and the southern facade, the windows that used to be in there were filled in years ago with masonry infill, structural infill, to keep the walls from falling down in the event of an earthquake. So we removed the windows, and this was many years ago, put in masonry. So to do a historical restoration, you would think you would probably need to pull that masonry out, put new windows in to restore it, and then you basically increased the cost because you're inside the building now building a new concrete or steel frame to hold up the exterior of the building. And I could go on. I've thought a lot about this. The challenge that we have, it's a historic building. The challenge is always going to be we will have to spend a lot of money to save it.
I think that answered the questions that various directors were asking at different times, and that's, I think, critically important from my perspective, that we present you equitably the information that you, whether you proceed or you don't proceed, that you understand the impracticality of operating the building, you understand the various costs, you understand the safety challenges that we face, becoming an attractive nuisance, becoming more difficult to maintain. Parking's the best alternative at the moment. It's not the reason that you proceed alone. Although parking around here has become very, very dangerous when there are large groups, fire lane blocked and all that sort of thing. So we want to make sure that you have a solid picture of it, because this increase in bid is frankly a very bitter pill to swallow.
It's a very bitter pill.
I think the question is whether you bite the bullet now or you bite the bullet later, and whether this is attached to the overall development or perceived separately. Consistent with the work that you've done to acquire the property that you eventually need for the 4th high school. And it's a cost we'd rather not pay all the way around.
May I ask one more question, Mike? The cost that the bid that Taylor presented.
Yes.
I think
Taylor
Excavators presented.
Yes. Right.
Includes from beginning to end for 2 buildings and the redevelopment of the site.
Yes.
The completed cost.
Yes, it does.
That's
2 buildings and the site remediation.
It includes, yes.
The site redevelopment.
Right, I'll summarize it. It includes demolishing both the Longfellow building and the annex, and appropriately removing and disposing of all the hazardous materials, including the underground fuel storage tank. Basically removing all the materials, filling the hole with structural fill that is left when you remove the buildings, and then constructing new asphalt paving with landscaping, lights, fencing, irrigation, And
a retaining wall,
and
too.
And a rockery retaining wall. And then in addition, all of the historical mitigation measures that we talked about.
I think something we talked about today too, it's, if we were to sell it, if we were to even go into a partnership, even with the museum, they were looking at wanting some of the parking. And a couple of organizations, I think, wanted some of the parking when we really need the parking for after hours. But if we do level it, if we do asphalt it, it is still our property from which to build a future building on that site if it were to come up to, if that was to be needed. Is that how I understood you today? That it was your opinion that, that about the parking, but it was just that if we were to pave it, we own it and it could be a future site.
Right. That building, that location may become a future building site 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah.
If you continue to own it, you retain the flexibility to someday use that
The
for
land.
a use that's compatible with the stadium that we need.
I just heard this, the estimation that's on whatever slide that has what it would cost to upgrade. We were talking $9 million. That would probably be keeping the hallways and stairwells the same. It would be more if we were to take out all the hallways, the floors, everything. We talked about retrofitting it for seismic reasons, adding all that back in. I just saw dollars. I saw money pit, and it terrified me.
Yeah, especially if you were looking at a change in use. The $9 million that we estimated in today's money to allow the building to continue to function as an office building would, I think that my experience is that we would pay a lot more than that. Then, given the construction market and the volatility of the bids, plus especially if you're talking a change in use. I know that when we're looking at the cost for elementary number 18, even the change in the zoning in the energy code alone was a significant increase in the cost of that. And that has happened since over the last 4 years as well.
And we spent a lot of time explaining why our estimate on the high school went from 150 to 216 million.
Right.
It's a fairly consistent theme that we're doing.
So,
I want to make sure that this isn't. There are a variety of reasons for doing this. This isn't just a today issue. This is a 25 to 50 year look in the future.
Yeah.
You can decide not to do it now and do it later.
When we began our marketing process with Century Pacific and Long Bay Enterprises, they were the two companies that helped us. One of the things that they told me stuck with me, and that is that to really find someone that would be willing to put the money into that building to restore it and operate it, we, the district, are probably going to end up having to give them, as part of the deal, use of our land in that area, like the areas around the building, because that is really where the value would be in it for somebody that would entice them to come and spend the money on the building, because anyone else is going to see what I've already seen and I've talked about, and that is you would spend less money to build a new building of the same size. So why would you come in and do that if you didn't somehow get use of the property around the building?
I think one of the other worries we've talked about is that if we were to sell it to somebody, that we'd still be stuck with the remediation cost. I had that experience in another district where it was either given or sold an old building, and the district paid all of that remediation cost, and then didn't have the facility either. So that's a worry.
And I can say the same thing from another organization which I was a member of. You still have to pay the remediation cost no matter what. And it could be years and years down the road, and it'll continue to rise and rise and rise, but you still have to pay for the remediation costs.
Kind of covered all the territory, you think?
No. Carol, any further questions?
Carol?
Okay, so do we call for a motion?
Someone needs to, in this case, you could ask someone to move the recommended action.
Someone like to move the recommended action?
I would like to make motion
that the Board of Directors award the bid for the Longfellow site redevelopment project to Taylor Excavators Incorporated and move forward with this.
I'll second.
Okay, we move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No.
Aye.
Yes, a tie. The motion fails for lack of a majority. Move on to the next item of business.
Okay.
Okay.
We move on to 13.4, which is after-school program. And again, this was removed from the consent agenda to discuss further and ask questions regarding the award of the bid to the YMCA.
The reason, may I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. The reason why I started, and I asked that this be moved from the consent agenda to be discussed, is the clarification of requirements, just so that the public is aware of what the requirements are. We have several schools that have already programs established and already have a wait list on some of those sites. And some of those sites are not with the YMCA. And the question I have, how long or how will those needs be fulfilled? And what is the time limit for which the YMCA will have to come back and provide information as to when they can accommodate all schools, all elementary schools, or if they can or cannot, or how will we communicate that to the families that already have students at some schools that are not involved in the Y in those programs?
I don't know that we can answer your question until we conclude the negotiation process that this specifies is the contingency for the award of the bid.
Okay.
So basically, we're asking you to make it a contingent bid award, right?
Contingent bid award.
Right. So until Peter and the team finish with the discussions and negotiating the agreement that would succeed the current agreement, that would have all those provisions in it that we would bring back to you, I don't think we can answer those questions.
So
at the moment, nothing changes. Nothing changes until we have an agreement with them.
okay. So everything that's in place now will stay in place until we've received information back from the YMCA as to how they would accommodate care facilities at our other elementary schools and how they would act on that.
Well, I think the answer to that question is yes. And it's not just what the Y tells us, it's what we negotiate with them and what our priorities are in the sequencing that we think are important as well. So it's a joint process that the team's engaging in to go through the implementation of the program expansion and the upgrade and the standards and the verification of performance that we want at all of our sites.
Okay.
And the involvement of the instructional team in terms of sequencing of school expansion as well.
And have we informed the other activities who have programs at other schools? Have we informed them that they are still engaged at that particular school until we have received further information from the Y? And are they aware of the fact that their program has essentially not stopped?
I think that's a question I have to ask Peter to respond to, because Peter's team communicated with all of the people who submitted RFPs.
Yeah, and I can call on Cynthia to be very specific about that. There's been no changes thus far, and so as we renegotiate the service and facilities use agreement, we will make sure that we communicate that we're mitigating any disruption starting in the fall. So we don't anticipate a revision until mid to late September anyway, if that answers your question.
mid or late September?
We don't anticipate, at earliest, we believe we can revise the agreement mid to late September. So we're going to need to work on this throughout the summer.
Okay. It was presented to me by a constituent or a community member that some of the fees and costs that they are incurring at one facility is much less than the YMCA. And at what point in time are they going to be, and that facility is now full with students, at what point of time will they have to make the transition to the YMCA, or will they be able to make it to the YMCA?
That's all part of the revision negotiations.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that we close those loops with that.
I think the communications with the families involved and the activities involved is vital.
Absolutely.
Because they're not getting that information, or apparently that's not what it's being expressed to me.
We'll make sure that we close those loops.
Ask a question? I have a question around, we currently have 2 community partners, which we've had long-term relationships with in after-school care. And we went through the RFP process, and I think it was a really great process because it definitely highlighted the strengths and weaknesses of different programs, and now gives us an opportunity to go back and make improvements where needed. And there were 2 other companies involved that were for-profit, I believe. 2 or 3? 3. That were all for-profit. So we have a scenario where we have 2 organizations that have long-term relationships with our district, and we are looking toward moving forward with one with, I feel like, without an opportunity to go back and revisit the relationship with our other community partner and ask them if they have the capacity or the ability to bring their program up to essentially our standards, what we're looking for in after-school care. And I'm just, I guess, curious why that choice was made, that we wouldn't.
Do you want to talk about the point structure and where that particular, we're talking about the Boys and Girls Club in particular. Yeah, and where that point structure fell out.
I think there are a couple of factors here. And the first is that we had a lot of discussion as a review team and then at Cabinet about whether we wanted to divide the district between different providers or go with one provider. On the surface, using different providers sounds appealing. Parents have choice. There's different opportunities for people, different pricing, different programming. But as we looked at how you would implement that equitably, it became increasingly messy. And in the end, we felt that it was better to go with one provider. Boys and Girls Club submitted a proposal that was by far the weakest of the 5 that were submitted. We had, as Peter mentioned, we had a point structure in which companies were awarded points based on a variety of factors, including their fee structure, and Boys and Girls Club scored high in that area, as they do have very reasonable fees. But their program, as they described it in their submission, was not clearly spelled out. It did not meet the kinds of alignment with curriculum and district goals that we were looking for and that we saw very clearly in the Y submission and in one of the for-profit submissions. It just was by far the weakest proposal.
Okay, thank you. Director Mitchell or Director Andrews, any questions? Further questions?
I understand you, it was considered very messy going with more than one. It's rather difficult to do
Was there any consideration with, I mean, I do understand, you know, the two organizations are very close in the community as partners with us.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any consideration to that being a mitigating factor to keep at least the two partners that we've had in the past?
Yes. As Director Mason mentioned, we had five applications, 5 submissions, 5 different companies. 2 of them were for-profit companies we had never heard of before at all, and it was quite easy to say they didn't meet our standards. Then we had a company that submitted a very high-quality proposal, and we had a lot of discussion about that proposal compared to the YMCA proposal, but we also had a lot of discussion about Boys and Girls Club. It was not an easy decision to decide not to move forward with Boys and Girls Club. And it was really easy with the 2 that we'd never heard of before to say, okay, they didn't make the cut. It was quite difficult to make that decision with Boys and Girls Club, and we did have a lot of conversation about that. But in the end, we felt that the caliber of their proposal just did not merit continued conversation.
That doesn't mean we stop entirely working with Boys and Girls Club. It doesn't mean that kids stop going there. That doesn't mean that we don't continue to work with them in things like soccer. And we've asked them to handle soccer across the course of the district, all across the district elementaries. And they've not been able to do that. So it doesn't mean we don't want to work with them. It means that for this program set, the direction we're recommending we go after a very extensive proposal process and analysis process is with the one provider that we judge can provide consistently across our schools.
Further questions? Okay, at this point, we need a motion to accept the authorization to award the bid for before and after school care.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the authorization to award the bid for before and after school care. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. That brings us to section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn.
Thank you very much. Item 14.1 is a special meeting. It's August 16. It's summer commencement. It's here at the Community Resource Center. And I'm looking for the time on the agenda here, and I don't see it, but I know it's on your calendar, so I'm not going to worry about that. Item 14.2 is a special meeting, August 21. It is your workshop, and I wanted to draw your attention to a couple of edits since the last version that you've seen. We've made some adjustments based on your feedback. I sat with some staff and our facilitator, and we took a look at the sequencing that is implied. It wasn't necessarily intended, but was implied by the bullets in the community engagement conversation, which is extensive on the first day, and reorganized that a little bit and adjusted it so that when you look at it, you could see the sequencing with which we would approach that. And that's the work that that Peter, Dana, Debbie, Sally will be preparing. No changes to the student roundtable other than making sure that Cynthia is included in that preparation and concentration of student effort and display of information for you leading into that conversation, because that's really her area of expertise. The other thing that I've done, and I've done it frankly as a bit of a plug, is down at the bottom, which is something that's really exciting for you.
I thought we had agreed to not include that in a long 2 days of.
So yeah, we talked about that. So I stuck it in here for you so that I wouldn't lose sight of it. And move the other stuff into 5 o'clock. So here's the deal. You all were trained 4 years ago on your OPMA PRA, and I was kind of thinking we might get this all accomplished when we do a new an orientation, but then we changed the timing for the interviews and all that sort of thing for a director, and we're supposed to have you guys retrained in 4 years. So either we put it here or we put it in your board meeting, or we set up a separate meeting.
Train? What was our date?
I'm told August 4 years ago.
August.
And we've verified that, I think, with Val. We went in and looked at your certificates. Yeah, so I've got to do a little bit of double checking, but the advice I'm getting is that you need to do this again. So my question for you is, would you like it stuffed in here? Would you like it before your April 28 meeting? Would you like it at the end of your April 28 meeting, which I don't think is a really great idea, or would you like it on a separate date? It would be my choice to wait and do it with your orientation with your new board member, but that kind of puts you past the 4-year time. I just as soon not somebody catch us on a technicality. You know what I mean?
Well, and putting it in here, it's not heavy lifting for us to
No.
this is our routine work. It's stuff that you keep us above reproach on.
It's an hour dedicated to it.
It's an hour, but it's not heavy lifting of processing, decision, voting. No, don't vote at this meeting, but.
No, we could actually do it earlier at dinner and just have the presentation over dinner, although that's not very much fun. So I just want to make sure that we had a little bit of a conversation. If you want to do it some other time, happy to arrange that. I just want you to know that the advice that I'm getting right now is that we need to get this done before that month is out. You want me to find another place, or you want to leave it there?
I'd rather do it before our meeting in August.
On the 28th?
But I'll go with the majority here.
I have a conflict before the meeting on the 28th.
Before the meeting is difficult for me. I'd prefer it here.
Well, the other thing is we could move it up earlier in the day, and we could we could compact, for example, the community engagement work. But I'm not sure you want to take an hour off of that.
I feel at the end of the day, our heavy brain activity, so we'll be fine.
Heavy brain activity.
No, it's a refresher for all four of you.
It's a refresher.
Yeah, it is for all four of you.
We do this well, so.
Yeah, and I mean, if I get a different legal, if the attorney says, oh, no, don't worry about it, fine, but our reading of the law, your training last time was, you got to do this every 4 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's, we typically would do that with board member elections, but your election cycle is different than everybody else's, except for, Tacoma and Spokane, so. I'm sorry, I didn't find a better place to do this to you.
Okay. So be it.
I don't have any changes to the second day, so we're going to go forward. If you don't have any, significant revisions, with a team that works on this is going to go start putting the details together for you. Okay. August 28th is your regular meeting, and so at the moment, this is what we've got for you, and it's fairly substantial. And one of the things you'll notice is that it looks like we're just not going to get any of the SRO contracts to you until then.
But I do like the fact that we're getting a Snohomish County SRO contract.
That's our expectation at this point.
And that's before school starts, so.
Yes, and that means we'd make some adjustments to our staffing. That means also we'd have all 5 middle schools covered by SROs. So I'm very, very pleased with that.
I'm very pleased with that too.
Well, that statement kind of assumes that Mill Creek would produce a second SRO that would just cover the middle school. Otherwise, we're still splitting somebody between the two sides. So that's it for upcoming agenda items.
Okay, that takes us to 15.0, executive or closed session, and we do have an executive session this evening to discuss.
We have a closed session, so if you don't want to have any, evaluate a public employee kind of content in this, and you just want to stick with closed session, what you really could do if you wanted to is adjourn the meeting and just go into a closed session, and then you don't have to come back.
Okay.
Question before we adjourn?
Yes, of course.
Well, Director Wenta, it sort of went on the consent agenda with no real recognition from us. Is there any plan for recognition from us? I mean, a press release and things, but I just wonder.
Well, we were kind of thinking, we meaning the folks in my office that are sort of thinking about how will we handle this, what will we do, what have we done in the past. Kind of thinking that September, the first meeting in September would make, at this point, the most sense.
Okay.
After school's back in session. But if you wanted us to make it part of the 28th meeting, we could do that. I haven't talked to Ted about when he's available, what he would like to do, whether he's willing to. And frankly, we don't know what the impact of the next chemotherapy round is going to be.
And even in abstention, he might not need to be here as long as there is something from us.
Some kind of recognition.
Some recognition from us, I think, is appropriate.
I think that's a good point.
Appreciation, acknowledgement, I would like.
Yeah, one way or the other. If you have some specific wishes now that you would like to do, now would be a good time, unless you want to wait till we get back together in August. The other thing I will note for you is that we do need to schedule a new director orientation. I think we sent you a doodle poll. And then there's the possibility that I may need to ask you all to come together for a hearing on an appeal item.
Over the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
And you'll be familiar with the situation and the individual.
I think it would be nice if we could have a recognition time for community members or district employees to be able to come in, even if he can't be here, have it on the record of the presentations and things of what he's done and give some time and publicity. So if it's the 28th or the 11th, that there is some publicity about his recognition and we invite people to come.
9/11.
Which is the date of your next regular board meeting.
And I understand
that next regular board meeting, yeah.
Yeah, no, that is.
Prefer or you don't?
I prefer not.
Oh.
Because of the significance of the date? Okay, and maybe the 28th then.
If we need to have a conversation.
If it works, if he wants to be there, if he doesn't, but I just think it'd be nice on public record, the recognition that he well deserves.
Okay.
So thank you.
Try for August, or you prefer try for a special, or you prefer try for the
I'd like a
second
public
meeting?
I'd like a public meeting here.
The 28th?
Maybe the second meeting in September.
Okay.
You want to attach it to a regular meeting?
A regular meeting, I think is recognition for at a regular meeting, if
Check with
that's
him
okay.
and find out
But
what his
check with
preference.
him and, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to suggest then that you adjourn the meeting rather than recess to, and then we just go into a closed session.
That sounds good. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you and happy summer.
Have a good